This One Up podcast is brought to you by Windows Media Center. Your Xbox 360, your music, your photos, your TV shows, and your videos with one connection.
All right, and we're back for the last time from Santa Monica. You going to miss the place, fellas? What do you think?
No, I'm not going to miss the place.
You're very quiet now, John.
I'm still hungover.
You don't have to tell me about that one. Thanks to our good friends at Ubisoft and also our friends on the other side of the Atlantic, where they make the Macallan for us.
Oh.
Yes.
That stuff you were drinking smelled like an Irish peat bog. What the hell was it?
It was 25-year-old Macallan.
I could smell it from like 5 feet away.
It was fantastic. It was so good.
And I could smell you from about 10 feet away.
Well, you know, it's a little early defense system. So this is the wrap-up show for E3 2007 from Santa Monica for the One Up Radio Network. That's John Davis and I'm Garnet Lee. Sean Elliott is here with us because we're going to do PC heavy here in this first segment. And as promised, the man, the myth, the legend, the very good friend of the show also. You like that title, right?
I'm laughing and smiling over here, Garnett.
That's N Guy here to join us, as he did last year and has joined us before. Sorry for the little echo chamber response there. We gotta, I can't get too loud. Gotta keep it quiet.
I understand. Thanks for having me on the show again, Garnett.
Oh, of course, dude. We love having you here. So, hell, where should we start? We're gonna talk about PC, but I mean, N Guy, what do you think of the whole Santa Monica experience?
Honestly, I was expecting it to be a cluster bleep before the show began, because that's what we were hearing from all the publicists and a lot of people. There are only one or two people I talked to that were positive on it. But I think the scaled down experience has been so much better. I mean, to be in these rooms where you can hear the game, but it's not cranked up all the way. You can hear yourself think, you can hear what the developer's saying. Very few developers and publicists, I think, lost their voice during the show. So I like the scale of it. The only drawback was, well, there are two. One was that the running around that you might have to do depending on how you scheduled it, because the hotels aren't all clumped together. And the other was Barker Hangar. I mean, I really wanted to get down there and see, some of the things that were on display, and I just wasn't able to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never got there. I was going to today, but I went to the hotel where EA and Sony and all those guys were, because I'd not been there yet, and it was like one or the other, so I did that one because it was,
I think you made the right call.
Yeah?
Yeah, because they have more set up in their individual suites, first of all, and the trip to and from Barker Hangar is time-consuming because it's not close. It's not close at all. And really, when you drive up on the place, you absolutely get that. Shane and I went there yesterday, and we're like, oh dear, this is where E3 went to die. I mean, it's really a just old...
There's rumors kicking around today that next year they're moving it to Vegas. I mean, that might just be... Jeff Bell was quoted at MCV out of Europe saying that he thinks it should be Vegas, and Microsoft's an ESA member, and...
Well, what was interesting was, the way the various console manufacturers sort of approached it. I mean, Nintendo had just a room set up where there were sort of two halves of it, and they had, their guys, I guess, from the Treehouse, and they would just basically cycle through, and you could sort of play whichever game you wanted to play. Microsoft pretty much took over the Viceroy, so they had a nice theater where they were showing Halo 3, and then in the various suites, you could go see individual games like Halo Wars or Fable 2, Mass Effect. And then Sony, like you're saying, they were the same hotel as EA and Activision, I think. And on the main floor, they had their game display area where you could talk to the developers and get a little hands-on. Then going down a level, they had a breakout room where you get individual presentations with developers. And then below that, which you pointed out, John, they had the arcade. And when there was almost no one in there, and that was a really big room with all these stations set up.
It was like nearly every game. Little Big Planet wasn't there, which I was disappointed by, but you could play Heavenly Sword, you could play... When I got there, I was the only person in this huge room, and it was like, it was like all catered, and then this other guy walked in just after the caterer dropped off a bunch of drinks and stuff to put there, and and the caterer was just like in a black suit or something, and this guy with all these cameras and everything bolted down thinks that the caterer is a Sony rep and starts asking him questions, which the caterer proceeds to answer.
Really?
It was hilarious.
That's awesome.
So this guy's like playing Uncharted or whatever. He goes, "Hey, do you know when this is out?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I think that's September, October kind of time."
Nice.
Like
Nice.
Naughty Dog needs the pressure.
Even better, like the way the way the internet works is a September, October, and a release announcement, and it spread across all the blogs. Everyone's like, "Where the hell did this release date come from?" Oh, it came from the catering dude at this suite.
This is how rumors get started.
Yeah, I agree with the Las Vegas thing. I don't think it's much of a stretch to look around this sort of a convention if it's going to be like this and say, oh, this belongs in Vegas, because that's the place that's set up to do this sort of thing.
It would have been so much better because you would have had you could have still had the sort of the bifurcated E3, right? You could have had the Barker Hangar experience. Like, I went to the NBA All-Star game this year, and they were at the Mandalay Bay.
Right.
And so Mandalay Bay has a pretty big convention center area, and it's a bit of a hike. It might even be longer than the old E3 hike between West Hall and South Hall. But nevertheless, you could have in the same building, the Barker Hangar type experience where you have the booths, and then publishers could do, their behind closed door stuff in hotel suites.
Yeah, something like the Mandalay or the MGM. You could do the entire thing in just that location.
Exactly.
They're all set up like that. The Venetian as well, because it has the Palms.
the Sands.
The Sands Convention Center area there. I mean, they're all set up to where every one of those hotels is set up to run big conventions. Las Vegas is equipped to handle big conventions. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer at this point if this is what they want to achieve.
Absolutely. But one of the rumors I'm hearing is that they're going to combine E3 and E4 next year, which I guess makes it E7, and make it more like TGS or Leipzig, where there's a consumer show and press and retailer trade show going on at the same conference.
Back to what got them irritated about E3 in the first place, which was it being overloaded with people that didn't need to be there and it becoming a big, dog and pony show.
Like I said, it's a rumor. I mean, I don't know how much stock to put in it right now, but I think they're going to explore things. I mean, but my feeling is that I bet when each of us, goes away and starts talking to our friends at the various publishers and people we know, we're going to hear that the response from publishers was not as negative as we thought it was going to be.
What I've seen be funny is the publishers are really enjoying it because their feet don't hurt and they're not losing their voices and they're in air-conditioned rooms and there's plenty of food and, it's very comfortable for them to demo and they're in one location. And all the journalists are like, I fucking hate it. I've walked for miles. I've not seen everything I wanted to. I mean, something you said, Sean, was it's like being on the hide of the elephant, and because you don't get to see the entire, the readers and listeners get to see everything, and hardly anyone here.
That's my one concern at this point. I'm liking it, and even I have no issues with the Barker Hangar scenario either. It's like I would rather go into that environment and have absolutely unfettered access to any game I want at any given moment I want in an old airplane hangar than be in the nicest convention facility in the country and have to fight through an army of the greasiest fools in line to get every free sticker and pen and hat and everything. Actually, when you walk into Barker, they're trying desperately to hand baseball caps to you, and it was interesting to see all the people no thanks, and just I'm here to do business. Whereas, of course, before it would be, yeah, sure, give me more hats. I'm going to open up a store down on the pier. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think the caps will be going for a whole lot on eBay anytime soon.
People spent all their money on the Microsoft butt pads already.
All right, so I think that's probably enough good wrap up on E3. But to me, I think the thing is, of course, you'd rather have the unfettered access to be able to go play the games, but having it spread out like it has been the biggest challenge. And to your point about the publishers, one publisher rep actually said, yeah, it's great. We just get to hang out. They bring catered food to us. It's air conditioned. A lot of people miss their appointments, so we don't even have to do anything.
Sweet.
Isn't the whole point to show off your games? I mean, that doesn't really sound like it's effectively doing a lot for them. And another point that came to mind to me talking to one of the guys at EA is that, this is also going to be a challenge for them in the months to come, because as different outlets plan their coverage, there's always that, those scenes where we all gather around a table and we talk about what do we want to cover. Well, where do we have, opportunity to cover this game or that game? And typically coming out of E3, when everybody's seen stuff, they can all speak intelligently about it, and those priorities can be set by group consensus. What's going to happen, I think, in the next couple of months is that it'll instead be a case where when you're sitting around that editorial table, you'll have one person who saw a game and they're trying to make their case for why that should be, featured coverage, and somebody else who saw another game and they're trying to make their case for why that should be featured coverage, and it's just going to be a clash. There's not going to be a real chance to have common ground on it.
There's going to be a big fight over Harvest Moon DS Cute.
Yes, and Jenga.
It's even going to be a challenge for publishers, only in the sense that the kind of buzz that you could have gotten out of the old E3 by lines and just sort of people gathering. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we think about the E3 where they showed the Metal Gear Solid 2 trailer for the first time, or when EA had Medal of Honor Allied Assault for the first time, and Nintendo last year with the Wii, the Wii's real coming out party was E3 last year. Mm-hmm. And what I've been saying to, a couple of people I know over at EA and MTV after seeing Rock Band at EA's Editors Day a few weeks ago is that if this were the old E3 and Rock Band was in front and center when you walk into South Hall and you see someone on a raised stage in that massive EA oval circular booth playing that game, that would have been, Rock Band would have been the Wii of this year. And there's no way anyone would be able to leave E3 talking about Guitar Hero 3. It wouldn't be possible. You're talking about Rock Band. But, now it's these more little intimate experiences where you're in Alex Rogopoulos' suite over at the Fairmont, playing and stuff like that, which, it's almost more viral now. You don't get that sense that you got last year.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Sean, you got a sense of a lot of good PC stuff, so let's get on and talk about some games. Let's kick right off by Crysis, because one of the main reasons I went out to Barker yesterday was to play Crysis, because...
so I was telling you too.
Because you were telling me how good it is.
When we're arguing afterward, not only just arguing what to cover, when everyone is arguing, what's the game of the show, what's the shooter of the show or anything, and we're all wanting to do it. And I was looking online, in the evenings here, and I'm seeing... This is almost like for me, my experience is that this is the show of the shooter, because everyone's talking about Call of Duty 2,
right,
and about Halo, and about Killzone, and not enough talking about Crysis, because I just think they don't go to look at it,
And that was the only place to play it, right?
It's only a Barker Hangar, right? So
it's
a lot
of
people
Barker
really
Hangar.
haven't seen it.
Right, and so the thing is when you go there, for the first time, they give you access to, the public, the press, I guess in this case, access to a level that comes from the game, as opposed to a vertical slice, which is an artificially constructed segment, a snippet of gameplay to give you to suggest how some of the features might work and whatnot. Yeah. So with this game, it's been around. I mean, people are calling it Jesus Crysis. It's like they're so used to saying this is a great looking game, and this is. It got to the point where that's all it was known for. That's its trick. Oh, that's the good-looking game. That's a phenomenal-looking game. And then people want to know, is this a good playing game? And people are suspicious. It's kind of like, with men or women, depending on who you are, if someone looks too good, maybe there's some other deficiency or defect there. And I think that people were kind of like thinking that way. And I'm not saying that's true, by the way, but
Crysis, the blonde bombshell of games.
So, and I went and when I was playing it, I had a fantastic time. So I wanted you to go and experience that too, see how your experience with it compared to mine.
I had a fantastic... I totally fell in love with the game right off the bat, much more so. So here's the big difference. The vertical slice thing was really abstracted. It's like, here's how the guy's different nanosuit stuff works, and here's how you can customize weapons.
But it wasn't
and
a big enough
stuff
playground
to fool around with. But it didn't have any sense of coming together. So my first impression from playing 5 minutes of it, first 5 minutes was, wow, this is really a lot like Far Cry. Mm-hmm. Because probably it doesn't help that it's a tropical island setting,
vehicles
roaming around. It's like the most gorgeous game you've ever seen. The water effect is unbelievable. It is so unreal how when you jump into the water, you can see that way the light diffracts through shallow water, and you can actually see the bottom.
That's a real-time effect. That's not just
all lighting effects in there are real-time effects, and as far as I know, there are no what you'd call technical terms a light map. That this is all being handled, and processed in real time.
So the way that the surface of the water and the way that the diffuse light is hitting the riverbed or whatever.
That's and then there are crabs, so if a crab skitters across the ocean floor, the seabed, you'll actually see the light. Yep. Yeah, it could move in such a way as that.
This is getting
it's like watching Jacques Cousteau. It's crazy. I watched this guy who was playing in front of me, and it was really funny. He's on one of the boats, and the boats they've just added machine gun turrets to them, so you can drive the boats and fire out of them, and that's really fun and cool. And he's like dog fighting. What do you call it when boats are battling? Anyway, like
right.
It's like these fighting these other boats, huh?
Bloodwake.
Yeah, he's totally bloodwaking these other two boats, and he gets one of them down, but his boat is just about to explode, so he jumps off of his boat right as it explodes. He goes swimming, and while he's swimming, the other boat starts chasing him, and the tracers from the machine gun fire into the water, he's underwater, are going by and doing both like a cavitation effect and then like, the bubbles filling in behind it through the water.
So it's like Saving Private Ryan.
It's totally like Saving Private Ryan, and
we're already back to the well, there's gameplay in there too, but
there
it's
is
just like
I'm going to get a gameplay. And it's like we were talking about graphics, and I was standing there looking at the monitor and literally had my mouth open, like whoa. And the gameplay part of it is that the AI is really smart. I mean, you hear these guys in his boat trying to run him down and chase him with their boat and firing at him in the ground. It's not like, he fell off the boat, he must be gone.
For me, when I fired it up, like you're saying, it was very much like Far Cry in that opening moment where you see a panorama of just this Tahitian type, flora everywhere, beautiful sea, and you say, okay, what do I do? And the first thing you do is observe. And so, I begin this demo. I put a scope on my rifle and I look down at the docks. And of course, this would be like the equivalent of one scripted behavior among many that any of the AIs can perform. But so he goes and unzips on the dock and he wants to take a leak. Laughably so, there's a combustible barrel right next to him.
Of course.
And so you're like, okay, why is this there? And actually, I asked the Crytek member there, and he because before when I last met with them, Frankfurt, there were no combustible barrels, none whatsoever. But I guess their testers demanded it, or so they're saying. So they're back in there anyway. But so the first time I played this, what I did is I go down into this villa. Well, I sniped the guy, and that alerts one of his cohort AI, who then fires a signal flare into the sky and summons another attack jeep that's got a gun on the roof and other guys. And so that time around, what I would do is I would just sort of like go into cloaking, lay down, be still, let them go back into a search pattern, and then pick them off, and then sort of proceed from there. Then I worked my way around this horseshoe bay on foot, kind of more or less doing the same. Jeeps would go by, they wouldn't see me. As they would pass, I'd hit them in the back because they'd have a fuel can strapped to the back by the tire, hit and blow that up. But so
there's so much going on. I mean, that's kind of the deal, is that there's so much going on with the AI, and it moves so fast, and it has like a pack mentality. They do not just come at you straight. They'll go and take cover, they'll regroup, they'll try and flank you. They call in extra guys, they bring in jeeps with turrets on them, like he's talking about, and this is like what forced me at least to like go like after the first 5 minutes to like actually learn how to play Crysis, because Crysis plays really different because of the nanosuit, and they cleaned up that interface. Now it's just like a quick little circle of icons. You jump between speed or cloak or power mode really
strength
quickly.
And shield, yeah,
and this is where like I might not play the game as crazy emergently as you do, but what I liked was like as I started to figure out how to do on these assaults, you could like switch to speed, run into a group of guys, take down a couple of them, switch to cloak, get out of there. When your cloak runs out, go back to speed, get back out of the way, go back, like circle around guys. It felt like you almost like a superhero. You're like diving in, attacking them from one side, going away, circling around, coming in from another side.
Can you trigger one power as another, as the effect of a previous one? So if
you choose, you can bind each of these to your keyboard.
Right.
So if you want to forego the rosette wheel altogether, which it actually is pretty effective. You get used to, you depress the mouse wheel, right, and then you micro move your mouse, and you'll move it in. But if you don't want, and I will prefer, I'm sure of it, just hitting a key so that when I want to very quickly go into sprint, pick up some momentum, shift over into power, which also gives my legs more strength, then hit shift and jump to super jump.
So
and
this
way
I
just
could do
really
a super jump. As I'm coming
over.
down off the super jump, I could switch into super strength and be ready to
to punch through the roof that you land on as you're descending, or to go to shield.
Wow.
So this is why,
dude, it is exactly like that, and that's how you start playing the game. And it's like amazing. You get into like the zone where you're like speed, cloak, speed, power, speed, cloak. You're just diving in and out of battles.
So you're Peter Petrelli in Heroes. It's you have to choose which power at what point you want, but that's it's one at a time. But
this is why I wanted to talk about my second playthrough. So that was just a preface to say the whole sneaking around the island, because ultimately, that's one play style. But the second time, I said, okay, let's just go superheroic. So ran down there in speed, go up to the guy in the dock, switch to strength, and then you can grab any person or object whether or not strength is selected. But the strength, it should be pretty obvious where it's going to help.
It's awesome.
So I grab this guy by the throat.
You do this chokehold. It's like total Darth Vader. It's total Darth Vader. You like grab the dude. You got that moment right where you like grabbed him and you like had him around the neck and like held him up and you're like, the Force. I must kill this.
So after I grabbed that guy, actually what I did is, this all seems brutal, but this is how when we talk about video games and playing shooters, it makes you sound like a masochist or something. But
sadist, you mean?
A sadist, sorry. So I took this guy and put his head up against a rock and then started punching the shit out of his face. And then the other guys at that point were shooting, they were firing at me. So then I use his body very much like Metal Gear, but of course this is with the speed and in the feedback of a first-person shooter. So use his body. I'm still holding him by the throat. And it's crazy. You can tell when they die in this game because people's tongues loll out of their mouths and stuff. Again, this is really it's pretty perverse too if you're not used to playing these games. But
is this a Rockstar game?
No. So then what happened is I threw the body up through the air and then fired. You're able to quick switch back from my fist to my gun and fire a few more rounds as it's descending. So if I hadn't had strength and I hadn't already pummeled the guy and there's a chance he's still alive, which can happen, then you can finish him off that way, throw him into friends. And then so from that moment on, it was like this epiphany. Okay, ideas are just coming to me. So you see enemies retreating into a house because you threw a grenade by them or something. So you go up to the wall next to it and you're like, there's a good chance they're here. Punch through the wall. And then what would happen is that the sheet metal, the corrugated wall goes through and knocks them back. And then as it collapses back down forward, I've already got my shotgun out. And then I blow them through the other wall of the building or, jump up on the roof. And a lot of these are things that you won't see depending on how you play because, depending on who you're watching play. But as you sort of have that aha moment and you think, okay, what about the potential? Jump on the roof, punch down into the roof. I know there's probably weapons in there, then I can use these to fight the guys because I ran out of ammo. And I think also, if you have experience with Battlefield-type games, and by which I'll include Warhawk, if you're a console-only player listening, you've had a Battlefield Modern Combat game, a Warhawk, but the notion that when you get in a vehicle, rather than as in Gears of War, where you're about to embark on a level where you're just in this vehicle and it's very important to you. You start looking at them as just tools in the same way that you might grab a gun, use it for 3 rounds, find something better and do it. So that could consist of seeing a truck, shooting it up until it starts burning, and then getting in and then ghost riding that into a group of guys and having it blow up, going out into the water. The boat, like you were saying, Garnet, the thing with the cannon that you're able to control while you're piloting the boat is effective, but the alternate cannon on it by hitting 2 is even more effective. And so
what I would do is hop up into the turret.
So you switch, and this is something that's very that Battlefield and Quake Wars and players are comfortable doing with your number keys. Switching between positions in any vehicle because if you don't have a squad in a Jeep, say in your Battlefield, you drive up, hurry up and get on the gun, shoot some guys that are trying to put C4 on you. So then what you do is you go by the shore and you see a bunch of guys that had pulled up in a Jeep and they're fighting you. Switch to gain the momentum, switch seats. The boat doesn't stop, of course. It continues to bob along. Strafe all them and then get back in the seat and speed the boat back out around. And so overall, there's just, the fun for me is that there's so much versatility in the gameplay. You're rewarded for experimentation, even to the point where you can ram a palm tree and have that fall over and hit someone and smash them. But however, for all the excitement, I did want to cover my ass and say that there are some very obvious AI issues, but they strike me as more of the bug nature, kind of that they can resolve. I really hope they resolve them. And those are, you fire on an enemy and he doesn't even seem to notice, doesn't return fire. And so this isn't like every encounter you're having, but it happened. If I'm playing in 30 minutes, it might happen to me 5 or 6 times, and that's far too often.
I know you like to experiment with your games a lot, and I think the another game I saw that's going to have a lot of people like having new experiences with it is and it's not really an expansion, but the next chapter of the Company of Heroes games, the Opposing Front.
I thought you were going to say BioShock. That's a transition that would work either way. Yeah, the Company of Heroes, huh?
Yeah, because the two new, and especially the Brits, because they showed a lot of the Brits. The Brits are really going to change the way this game is played because
they're awesome.
They are awesome. They are really awesome.
We kicked ass.
Yeah, apparently, Brits were known to be very tough fighters.
We were.
They changed so much about the way Company of Heroes has worked with these guys that playing them is going to be a whole new experience. They took out like one of the big deal about all the Relic games that they've been doing in land-based strategy is that your squads gained experience and they got better, and so you started to build this relationship where they got rid of that part for the Brits because the Brits used command and control much more aggressively. So you have a lieutenant.
We had skin in the game, not like you Yanks.
You could join in when you visit Relic, which is a studio based in Vancouver, Canada. They're and composed of an international team, you know.
Yeah.
It's my hometown.
Yeah,
But yeah, and I love that city too. When you talk to Josh, who's one of the lead designers, he immediately breaks it down, and he's like, when at the moment Hitler and the Axis armies, they weren't really worried about the Americans because they were untested. They knew that they had their ass handed to them on multiple occasions by the Brits and whatnot. And then he's bringing in the Royal Black Watch, groups and this and that, the infantry regiments, and you could see the pride, and then he's bringing in the Canadian efforts to take the city of Caen and all this. And it's cool to see that. In the same way, whenever you got a war game, like if you talk to Oleg Maddox, who does the IL-2 flight games, he'll be first to remind you that Russia played a little bit of part in that war that we tend to forget.
Tad bit. Anyway, I think that just that change alone of having officers on the battlefield, and the officers have a sphere of influence, and so whenever squads gain experience, they funnel it into the officers, who in turn gain the ranks. So you start to have this dynamic of keeping your officers with your squads and keeping them in command and control range, and using them as the lieutenant is meant as like an offensive guy. So he gives you a speed boost, and you're able to maneuver more quickly, get into positions better. The Brits also are able to do all sorts of emplacements, so they can really dig in and entrench. And when they capture an area, instead of having to go out and then individually capture all the supply depots within that area, they automatically have them. It's like, oh, you captured this area, and boom, now you have these extra. So they're very much instead of like Company of Heroes, which has always, when I played it at least, been a land grab game. It makes it a game where if you're playing the Brits, they're probably going to go grab part of the map and then hunker down and say, okay, come get me.
It's such a different game than Command and Conquer and some of the other the other games that have the other RTSs have come out this year, and that there's such an emphasis on the tactics. But then to
defend them, I did not realize how much I liked Company of Heroes until I played Command and Conquer 3.
Same here, because
and it was like, oh. Yeah, no, I really do like that Company of Heroes.
It's the difference between being in the war room and moving the pieces around the board, and actually, like you're saying, where you level up when you start to raise the ranks of your captains and lieutenants and stuff. Then you start to invest value in specific units, and you might have an encounter which involves no more than maybe one tank, one piece of artillery, and maybe a couple riflemen, and it's like you're completely focused on it. Whereas in CNC, that's just one little thing,
it's just fodder.
And you can just let the AI sort of and the rock, paper, scissors resolve it for itself. But in this game, you've got these guys, and you're like, I'm going to put him. Micromanagement is usually used, as a knock against something, but I think it works so well here because you never have so many troops.
You get invested, you go in close and play. And the other army's gonna be really cool to play with. That's the Panzer Elites, and the Panzer Elites are badass. And the big deal here is what they've been able to do is now you can mount a squad into a vehicle, and the squad maintains its fighting capabilities. So this is really important because it's basically mechanized. The origins of mechanized assault. You can load these squads into these half tracks and just go trekking into a battle, and the guys are back there in the back of the half track, leaning out the side with their whatever, their Panzerschreck or their machine gun or whatever.
That's the new thing too, is because you could always mount. You can always load vehicles up with units and whatnot. But in this case,
now it's like a mobile emplacement
to fire from it. Yeah.
Now it's like basically you've taken an emplacement and you can drive it around the battlefield.
So do you guys feel like Company of Heroes is now the gold standard for RTS?
It definitely is in my mind. Yeah,
they've said that actually. Ironically, I read a quote where one of the Relic guys said, this is the game now that people are going to measure their. And I was like, well, that's pretty proud. And
he can say it all he wants, but it's if other people are going to feel it.
It seems I think it's getting there.
It's already become the yardstick. I think everything gets compared to it. People were even talking about Halo Wars. Using Company of Heroes as the frame for
that
frame
would
of
work
reference
so well. That would be such a better decision, I believe, than to go with the Age of Empires format, since it's going to be on a console and stuff.
Do you think it's going to affect the reception of StarCraft 2?
It's hard to say. It will in my mind for certain, but it's not going to affect the sales of StarCraft.
Not so much sales, but yeah, I know, because it's kind of the challenge is like now when you have games that end up sort of being in advance. Like for instance, like. You're now seeing this year on the console side the God of War ripoffs, right?
Oh yeah.
And you're going to start to see it towards like the end of this year or next year is like the game. So Gears was derived from RE4, and now the Gears is was way beyond what RE4 did. Like you're going to see that sort of influence, and that's what I'm sort of saying. And look, the guys at Blizzard, they have so much money and so much time to do what they want. We have no doubt they'll make the game they want. I'm sort of curious. It's like what happens when it affects the expectation of the gamer.
Right. It's so hard. I was just having a discussion with Paul Wedgwood, who's making Quake Wars this afternoon, and it kind of came to the same thing, is that once you have a successful game, multiplayer and competitive game, whether it's strategy or shooter or anything, it kind of just hits this stasis where all the diehard players will accept is the same but looking better. And it's exactly what's happening with of course, with StarCraft, and it's basically locked into that position. And Company of Heroes a new franchise, was able to come in and do all this stuff in the same way that, Battlefield and Flashpoint were able to come in, whereas at the same time, if you would dare put a vehicle in Quake 3 or something, the tourney players would have strung you up, So it's just... And I think there's space for both, but yeah, I mean, I won't be able to play StarCraft 2, like you're saying, and not have in my mind the other options that other companies, such as Relic, have introduced.
I'm not sure that StarCraft 2 is such a good example because it's such a unique position by virtue of its popularity in Korea, by virtue of its acceptance as a paradigm of real-time strategy games, that were they to go in a whole other direction, would it even be StarCraft?
But I think on the level of control that you have in Company Heroes, I think that is a challenge for StarCraft, right. And that people have now... I mean, Company Heroes did okay. I mean, it wasn't a huge seller. It did, I think worldwide, probably a couple 100,000 units.
Yeah.
But it made enough of an impact that the people that really like that kind of game are now able to, after they played the expansion, able to put a unit and have 6 guys fighting out of the back of it. And,
Opposing Front is standalone. I hope that some of the Company of Heroes buzz that got out there, and maybe people who stood on the fence before, will now come in and say, you know what, I'm going to check out this game. I'm going to go try Opposing Fronts. And I think if they get Opposing Fronts, they'll probably wind up buying Company of Heroes in the end also.
And all that talk, it's got a great single-player campaign, too.
Yeah, actually, they said the single-player campaign of this is longer than the...
It's like twice as long.
Yeah, it's longer than the original game.
So it's kind of a sequel, right?
It's what they're doing is they're doing what shooter games have been doing for a long time. They're saying, we've got this established franchise, we have this established engine, let's make the next chapter of content. Yeah. Whereas the real-time strategy games genre has always been caught up in, when you make a game, you make one expansion pack, and then you move on and make the next iteration of the engine.
And because in the past they had to put so much, every iteration of the engine had to have a massive logic and AI upgrade, whereas they're kind of at a point now where it's pretty, they're not so worried about pathfinding being broken the way they used to be in Command & Conquer.
And the difference there with the expansion to the standalone is they're probably just sick of knowing that you can only, say, if they sold 200,000 copies of Company Heroes, knowing that they can never sell any more than that of this, when at least there's some chance, if the stars align in the right way, that they might sell more.
Yeah, and they put all that time and money into building this great engine that everyone acknowledges is great. I mean, let's just keep cranking out on that and not spend the money on development.
I think they're on the right front there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them move, this franchise into the Eastern Front possibly next. Take the same engine, move into. We were just talking about how important Russia was, and certainly
the Pacific.
That was where I was going to go. I mean, certainly this game, the way it plays, would be like the first guys who could really go in and do something like Iwo Jima and make it really, really intense and.
I think they could take the engine and they could apply it to non-historical stuff as well. They could do this, Relic. They've got the Dawn of War stuff.
If you took the game as it is and you changed the Panzers and the Shermans to Warthogs and Wraiths and stuff, it would be. It would still be phenomenal.
It'd be a badass Halo Wars.
It would, it would be an incredible Halo Wars.
We were talking about sequels. You got to see one that I'm kind of curious to see what's happening with it, and we're just going to call it, I guess, not Fear 2.
Okay, yeah.
How's that shaping up?
Did you see that too? Okay, well, when I went in there, the first thing that's running is just this trailer reel, to show you just a few scenes as they're about to set up the hands-on demonstration.
Right.
And at first I was like, is this the same design team? Because one of the shadiest looking mechs I've ever seen comes out around a corner and it's supposed to be utterly menacing, but it was, it wasn't even Power Rangers stuff. It was just really bad. And they actually had some, the mechs in Fear are interesting. Exosuits, it's a combination. They had both.
Interesting.
They weren't the kind that would be hanging in in the 99-cent store, like on a peg with a. And this one really had that vibe to it. But
single color plastic with the tabs from where it was knocked out, the mold still on there.
Yeah. So not to linger on that, but what happened is when they turned it on, it wasn't anything like that at all. I mean, that must have been from a later level. I can just go right through the whole thing really quickly. You wake up moments after the ending of Fear 1. I don't know. You have this thing with spoilers in your audience. Maybe I better not say how Fear 1 ends in case someone is still going to get it. But anyway, it happens moments after that.
I want to know.
Okay, so big explosion. Right, blows up the Auburn area is what they call the setting of the game, and you wake up in a surgery theater, and at first things seem normal. The guys are worried about keeping your pulse going, and they're performing various things, and then all of a sudden it starts flashing into Alternavision, the old Silent Hill type thing, and that they employed. Somewhat successfully in the first Fear game, and then of course instead of nimbly working a scalpel and syringes and whatnot, they're just gouging and tearing into you, and it's just this abominable scene. Blood's flying everywhere, and this happens for a while, and it's pretty cool. I mean, they keep the tension up, but then you have a vision of Alma, the little devil doll girl from the Ring is obviously where they stole her, and you see her, and you wake up, and at that point, from then on, something has happened to you, and you're fighting the Delta team that you fought alongside in the other game. And in the demonstration there, it's all in the hospital and working your way out of it. Yeah. And so while you're fighting, which is a thing, because the problem with the first Fear that we had, we all agree, excellent AI, some of the best. They don't use scripted AI at all.
It's a blast.
It's all
that's
dynamic.
What made the game for me.
And the gunfights, the firefights, and just the feedback you get from firing weapons, from destroying the environment and stuff is great. And they basically said, hey, that worked, let's do that again. And the environments, so it's the office parks, like at some point I want something different. So here it was yet again another sterile environment, this time literally. And as you're playing, it was hard not to get back into okay, this is a cool game and I want to play it, because you're watching the AI do great things. You're throwing a grenade, kicking into slow motion, bullet time again, and just a few new weapons. There's this laser, sort of like, rather than the Tetsuo one in Akira that just like cuts right through things.
Yeah.
It will trace a line everywhere it goes and start a fire and leave a burning thing, but then it will.
I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, though. I mean, because he's like setting this up, and the other shoe's coming, isn't it?
Something is, but no, maybe not. I mean, and that was kind of cool, because as you arc this laser across everyone, they catch on fire. The AI now seeks to extinguish itself. If there's water anywhere, they're going to run to that. Otherwise, they just put on this crazy death dance and go down. But yeah, there was nothing really happened exceptional that made it. This was Fear. And that was part of my concern, is like, it's not a bad game by any means. It was an enjoyable game, but it's not a AAA game for the reasons that we explained. And the other thing that we have to be concerned with now is that Vivendi still owns the title Fear.
Right.
And Monolith is now with Warner Brothers making a Fear game. Vivendi just announced Fear Files. And what happens is, when you have this game that was already so limited in what it excelled at, and now you're having multiple versions of it with different competing publishers and things, I think they're just going to...
Have you seen Fear Files?
They're going to saturate it. Just enough where I walked and watched someone playing it, and I was like, this could have been the other game, Although this is Monolith's game, so I trust them. They're the original, creators of the IP. But... yeah, it was interesting. It's kind of one of those weird things. It's like,
did they give any indication of like what the high level of what they're really trying to do with it? I mean, is there anything new they're bringing to the table?
It's just they even they say pretty much flat out. Sometimes you'll get someone that makes a movie like Rambo or something, and they say, well, yeah, it's a movie about stuff that blows up, and there's, insofar as is possible, we might dig into some other things. And they said this is a game about AI and firefights. We did that well. The other stuff is sort of the horror elements are like a palate cleanser in between the main course, and unapologetic.
It's kind of the Michael Bay approach.
It definitely is. And you see more and more of that. And that's what video games, I have to apologize for it. And that's, again, with Gears of War is,
Yeah.
And Epic say the same thing. This is, remember Chris Rock at the Oscars, and he goes to the theater and says, what's your favorite movie? And they're like, Aliens versus Predator. And then not a single person had seen any of the movies that were up for awards that year. It's kind of like that. I mean, there's certain directors that, this is what we do. This is what we make. And we're not going to be ashamed of it.
Right.
It's cool to have fun with it. So before we get out of the PC arena, I want to make sure and hit on something N-Guy saw, which is the id Tech demo. So how's it looking?
The id Tech demo is looking pretty sweet. I mean, it was pretty much the demo that they showed at the Mac event with Jobs. So, but what was interesting was they had it running on PC, Mac, Xbox 360, and PS3.
Oh, wow, really?
All set up, all simultaneously. So you walk into this long white room, vaguely 2001-ish, and there's a couch at one end, there's a demo area at the other end where they're showing the tools, and there's just this long table with the machine set up, and it's running it on each of those things. You could sort of jump in. Remember they were showing that sort of racing. It looked very much like MotorStorm. And so I talked with John Carmack, and he was saying the reason they showed that was because they wanted to prove to potential licensees, since those are the people they were meeting with, that they can do outdoors. They said, look, we can say, if we show this to people and they get it, they'll trust us on indoors because we've been doing indoors for years. They'll believe that. But if we just show people indoors and say, oh, we can do outdoors, they're going to be suspicious. So that's what they're showing. And it's an evolution of the Mega Texture tech from Quake Wars. And, looks pretty good. But that was the main thing. The more interesting thing was who was coming through to meet with them when I was there. So there were a couple of people from EA who were in there. I saw Frank Gibeau and St. John Bain. So St. John's from EA Partners, which is, they're working with the Rock Band guys from MTV. And so it's the people who EA doesn't own, but they publish the games, like Valve and Crytek and those guys. And the speculation kind of mounts because id's deal with Activision is up. So, yeah. So,
to complement that, when I last spoke with the company of Duty, the Call of Duty team, at Infinity Ward, and I was asking, how are you going to use this engine? And there was a lot of laughter and nervousness, and what I got out of it was that maybe Activision had big plans for it. So there might be the other piece of the puzzle there.
Right. I mean, I couldn't, obviously, they're talking to publishers and talking to a variety of publishers. And so I spoke with Todd Hollinshead, who's the biz guy there. And, they're trying to figure it out. Clearly they have a lot of options. They're not ruling out Activision at all. They're not really signaling any which way direction they're going to go. The one thing I sort of did get him to say is, are you thinking about housing all your games at a single publisher like you did before, or with multiple publishers? And he pointed out the pros and cons of either side. But the impression I get is that they're leaning towards a deal with a single publisher again, and just sort of figuring out who that's going to be. And if you look at, the kinds of companies that it's so hard now for developers to stay independent. So many of them are getting snapped up. And the ones who are still able to do it are the guys who made their money on PC games, like those prime PC guys. So the Valves and, Epics and now id. And I definitely did not get the impression they want to sell out. I'm saying? They still want to be in control of their destiny. So it'll be interesting to see sort of who ponies up the money to get that. But, and with Frank, EA Partners reports into Frank, so I didn't overhear the conversations. It could have been some of that, but I think they were definitely being shown the tools. So you have to imagine, EA's licensing Unreal. Right. They have whatever.
They dumped renderware.
And, my guess is that EA does not want to be tools dependent on any one company. So they're going to do that. The last thing real quick is what John was saying is, the tools are definitely much, much friendlier than they were in the past. John was definitely sort of giving a mea culpa on how they'd approached in the past, because he was so responsible for the programming, he was like, look, my time, programmer time, is more valuable than artist time ultimately for the good of the project, and so learn how to edit a text file. Well, now artists have tools that are used to, because you guys remember from when Mark Rain and those guys were showing that it was one of the things they stressed, and one of the things that publishers really love about Unreal Tech, even as they've been dealing with the growing pains as Epic gets its tech ready for the various platforms, right? Is the tools. Everyone loves the tools, and so these tools were definitely from what I could overhear, it looked like people were pretty impressed with the tool side of it. But even though they're going to do, they've improved the tools, they'll do better support and things like that, the way they portrayed it is ultimately that's a side benefit of them needing to approach the tools in this way to be able to build once-ish and have it run on multiple platforms, because they see their future is not just PC only, it's on these multiple platforms. So it's not like you just build the game on PC and it automatically runs on PS3, but you're not going to need to baby it as much. I mean, from what they were portraying it as, is that their artists didn't even actually know that it was up and running on PS3. You know what I'm saying? It's just sort of like, but the art and assets, like all that stuff comes over. So, and especially right now, because
for an EA, a setup like that makes so much sense. I mean, you're looking at multi-platform development, and how many publishers or how many developers in the last few months have you heard complaining about how hard it is, especially if they start on 360, to get their code running on PS3? If that problem is solved, like at a base fundamental tool level, especially for like EA, who does lots of multi-platform stuff, to be like, yeah, that was worth the money we spent on it.
Definitely, so I think there'll be a lot of interest in it. It looked good.
Cool.
Unfortunately, they're showing the first game. They weren't showing the first game that will run on that technology here, but at QuakeCon.
Exactly. So they're definitely trying to get us to all to come out there and check it out.
Hey, can you blame me? It's QuakeCon. It's celebration of all things id, right? That's the place where something like that should debut.
Absolutely.
It makes sense. There's other thing too with this show is that if you're not, and that would have been a top dog, but there's so much noise going on, and you want your signal to get through. I mean, QuakeCon, it's called QuakeCon, right? And you debut in the game, and the world pays attention instead of argues whether or not it's quite as good as this other game or this other one.
They'll have their audience. It'll be captive. They'll be all ready to rock and roll, and there you go. So, what did we leave out? The only thing we left out was your little Half-Life 2 drop.
Well, Half-Life 2 and the Bioshock. I mean, we'll probably run out of time, but the quick thing I learned about Half-Life should be no surprise to anyone. But well, of course, the Orange Box episode 2, Team Fortress 2, and Portal are on track. They're going to be out.
They'll be here this fall.
But the episode 3, it most likely will not be out in 2008. Not even. But the reason for this is that it's going to be this grand finale for the trilogy of episodes, and because it's going to be bigger than this, it's going to.
Was it originally only going to be 3?
I think so.
Right. It was from the beginning. It was planned as a trilogy of these episodes, but it's also going to be like all new locations and stuff. So the reason that they're not going to be, episode 1 reused a great deal of assets from Half-Life 2 proper. So since this is not the case, it's not just a matter of creating a couple new enemy types or behaviors.
But basically what they're doing is they're making Half-Life 2, 2 expansion packs, and then Half-Life 3.
But they're not expansion packs, I mean, like from what I've played of this game that's on the show floor,
how are they
and then
different
with
than
everything else, it's like a full. It's just a short game, but it's like a full. I don't know. I mean, do you really consider that when you pick up that orange box that you're getting an expansion pack?
Yeah, it's very much like what you get in an expansion pack. I mean, I can compare it to like one of the most popular expansion packs of all time, which would be the Diablo 2 add-on, and it's exactly like that. New campaign, new classes, all sorts of new stuff to do, and changes in the game. You had a graphics upgrade.
Well, you have also, though, the difference between expansion packs for Half-Life 1 is that if you have a narrative, in a story-centric game, and instead of telling a side mission or looking at the the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern thing, and you're actually just progressing with your game plan from the beginning. This is going to move this whole universe ahead, and this is going to, we're not saving big revelations.
There's a lot of expansion packs that do that.
Brood War did that.
Brood War, yeah. I mean, that's
okay. Maybe it is. I'm just thinking of it all, and the amount of enjoyment I got from episode 1, and then imagining like putting that together with Team Fortress 2, which I would happily pay for
enjoyment from
its own
episode
game.
1. I mean, I haven't been shy about talking how much I enjoyed. I really, really enjoyed episode 1. I just, why even dally around with calling? They projected a vision originally about episodic gaming that it was going to free up their production teams because they weren't going to get stuck in those big cycles. And within 2 episodes, now they're back to saying, well, you know what, maybe we really like to make those big games. And I applaud them for that because I like it when they make that game. Yeah. I like it when they do that.
There's no doubt about that they, what they promoted as their plan for episodic gaming has just completely vanished and that they've changed tack. But I don't know, do I mind getting, every 2 years some Half-Life, or would I rather just wait for 6 years for the next game?
Remember, for these guys in the dev cycles that they were on in the past, this is
That's true.
This is pretty. This is like doing a weekly show.
It definitely is for these guys.
The thing that's interesting is that
Good point.
there were a lot of objectives with it, and so they've introduced new technologies and things like that. I mean, wasn't episode 1 where they introduced HDR lighting?
Well, they had like that special little add-on level even before that. So yeah, but they did use HDR in the first episode.
Yeah, so it's gotten them on a bit of a speeded up process. I mean, even with I was talking to I'm forgetting his name now, but they're Biz Guy. And he was we were looking at the animated stuff, just the way that Team Fortress 2 looks. Mm-hmm. And you remember the thing they did with the heavy gunner?
Yeah.
And it's sort of saying like, hey, is that an experiment for animated stuff that you guys might do? And he sort of winked and nodded.
It's kind of cagey.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a creative shop. There's so many things and directions they can go with. I think it was ultimately a way for them to keep putting out content in a way that, even if it seems slow to us, was definitely faster than it took them to do Half-Life 2 after Half-Life 1. The thing is, I just think we're all sort of still holding out hope that they find a way to sort of get back to what they originally said episodic gaming was going to be. But I think we should just now accept that that's not what they are. That's not what they're going to do, and it'll have to be some other developer that gives us that vision.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I don't even know that I agree. I agree with that part. I don't know if I agree with wanting them to even ever go back to episodic. I love when they make Half-Life. Mm-hmm. Those games are awesome, and they are both of them completely worth the wait. Completely worth the wait. So hopefully, we won't keep you waiting too long.
Something else, real quick on that, is that when you're talking about the expressive animations and stuff for the faces, they're actually syncing that to the voice over IP. So that when you're in a game and you're talking to a friend, like I can run up with my character, your other, and this of course was an option in Team Fortress Classic that they had, but it wasn't synced and with this, degree of detail and everything. But so that should just be fun right there. I mean, just not just machinima and stuff, but so instead of red versus blue,
Yeah, Rainbow Six, the mouth moves.
When you're talking to each other?
Yeah.
I remember we were playing around with that. It was fun. Yeah.
But so instead of the Nutcracker puppet, hinged jaw going up and down, you're going to see, eyebrows lifting and things like this. I don't know to what extent. I'm sure there's going to be a mismatch, but depending on like how loud or the frequency of that you're communicating. But it should be pretty funny, and it'll add a lot to.
Yeah, definitely.
You got an early choice for game of the show before you take out of here, Sean?
I only have a personal.
Yeah, no, absolutely personal.
And it's like, I think both BioShock and Crysis were the most, impressive and exciting games for me this year.
That's cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Hopefully we won't keep you waiting too long. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side, we'll dive back into some console stuff, bring Shane back in, see if we can tear him away from the pool.
The man god.
Yeah, stick around. We'll be right back.
This One Up podcast is brought to you by Windows Media Center. Your Xbox 360, your music, your photos, your TV shows, and your videos with one connection.
All right, and we're back, and I will probably be the first person to take this fall, because after getting some credibility, or some cred at least, on calling the Sony PS3 coming out party here at E3, what the hell happened this morning and last night? I don't understand.
Well, what we were talking about is the announcement that the 60 gig SKU, which has been lowered to $499.99, well, that's being cleared out, and that's stopping being made, and after that, you won't be able to buy that anymore. So presumably the only SKU then is the $599 SKU with MotorStorm. And that's causing people to freak out. They're like, well, there's not a real price drop anymore.
It's not a real price drop.
Well, but okay, here's what I think is going to happen. I think there will be no point at which you won't be able, you will always be able to go to a store and buy a PS3 for $499.
They're just going to keep bumping it down. They're going to iPod it.
This allows them to make it like a fake price cut. So like when that model is gone, then they lower the $599 went to $499.
I think this is the trend of this generation, because this has got to be. I mean, we talked about this before E3. This has got to be coming from Microsoft as well. The Elite will be $399 soon.
Right.
This year, definitely. And I think you're right, but
like what Sony's supposed to do today, announced that, oh yes, on October 31st, we're going to lower the $599 to $499. No, of course not.
But you remember, there were all the analysts that said, Michael Pachter was saying that, he expected Microsoft to cut price this week. Mm-hmm. They didn't. So then he had to sort of retract and say, well, he was wrong. And the thing is that Microsoft doesn't yet, even before they sort of took back the price cut that they had made. Sony, Microsoft doesn't have to cut price in response to Sony. I don't think almost at any point this year. Like, I don't think the...
And you will be able to play Halo on a $299 device this year.
The question is it a premium or is it, the core? My thing is, I don't know that Microsoft is going to adjust price that much. What they need to do is just their own business, their own numbers. And my guess is that Microsoft wants to hold out as long as possible and see what impact the release of Halo 3 has on their sales. And if that gooses them to the extent that they think, then why make the price cut this year?
I had previously thought that they might phase out the core, but Patrick Klepek and I sat down with Shane Kim yesterday, and we were talking about how one of the themes of this show is the ways of tackling the mainstream and broadening the demographic, and all three of the platform holders have a very different strategy. You have Nintendo doing their thing, and then you have Sony, who is trying to position the device itself as the mainstreaming of gaming because it does so much, and then Microsoft are kind of caught in the middle. The one thing that he referenced several times was that, to be mainstream, it's driven by price. As much as you can say anything about creative, but price is what drives it. And the core is where they're going to play in that. The way they'll tackle Wii is with the core.
This is the same thing I've heard.
Is that the core will stick around. There will still be experiences that don't need the hard drive, and that they'll drive the price of the core down as cheap as they possibly can.
So somehow we switched gears and started talking about Microsoft.
Right.
But I'm not ready to leave the Sony thing alone yet, because I don't buy Shane's theory at all.
Are you serious? So
I totally don't buy
They did not want this to get out that is stopping production, and it's a snafu that got out. But I think it's
not a snafu.
I think you're foolish if you think that Sony is going to raise the price of PlayStation.
It's not
3.
raising the price. They are clearing product out. They've done this before. They did the same thing when they switched from the big PS2 to the PS2 Mini.
No, but I think he's right. I think that they'll clear this out, and because if you think about, what's actually happening here is a 20 gig extra hard drive, which is virtually no price whatsoever. To them on the cost side, it's nothing. A copy of MotorStorm, a game that shipped, they've shipped 1 million units of it.
It's a first-party game.
It's a first-party game. The unit price on a Blu-ray game is like, it's not cents, as some people have said. It is a couple of bucks to manufacture a Blu-ray disc. It's an expensive duplication process, but it's only a few dollars. And they've taken the Emotion Engine out. So the device itself is less of a device. Like right now, if you want a PS3 and you want full backwards compatibility, go buy one of the $499 ones now, because it is your last chance.
Were people chuckling at me when I said that?
What?
Possibly. That it was the time to go buy one, so you could get one with the Emotion Engine in it. But they're like, oh, I don't play PS2 games. I don't know. I have a pretty big PS2 library.
Well, let's go to something that Shane said. So, unfortunately, and I'm not contradicting you, I'm just sort of like I have some additional color information. I did an interview with Kaz Hirai yesterday at 9:15 a.m. By about 9:25, he was telling me exactly what David Reeves said either around the same time or later in the UK that just kind of, broke out and, is catching all this attention. And you talking about being shocked? I was shocked. So I'm sitting in an interview with Kaz Hirai, and he's saying this like directly and matter-of-factly, like it's common knowledge, and my jaw was on the floor. Like
you didn't think we were going to do this? This was our plan all along.
But they can't say, oh, but don't worry. After that, you'll be able to get this better one for the price of the one that we're trying to clear out right now.
Well, here's the thing, though. The other thing that I had heard, and this is just off of one source, but it's what I heard, and I want to run it down with some more people, is that there was a fight in Japan about reducing the price on the PS3 at all, and that the only way that Kaz was able to get the 60 gig reduced to $499 was by introducing the $599 80 gig, right? And positioning in this way. So I'm just sort of wondering if that battle is going on, and it has to be with Sony Corp,
right?
So Shubachi, who's the number 2, and Stringer, who's the number 1. If that's the case, if that's what's going on, then you sort of wonder, is Kaz just towing the company line in public, but in private, they're going to assemble the data, show that $499 is the price point at which it's moving, and then sort of do what you're saying, which is you'll have 2 SKUs, but they'll maybe throw in in a little extra something like maybe a PlayStation card when they put those out at $5.99 along with MotorStorm, and then still have the $4.99 one, which is naked.
Estimates run that they're losing roughly in the neighborhood of $200 per console sold. Is that still pretty much an accurate number?
No, I don't think that's an accurate number anymore.
What have you heard?
Any guess would just be a guess, but the word is, and no one's disputing them on it, is that they've brought down the cost of Blu-ray pretty significantly. They've taken out the EE plus GS, which is how they were doing backwards compatibility, so that's another cost savings. They do parts reductions all the time, so maybe there's a couple other things they kicked out. It's possible that at $5.99 they're close to break even. Possible.
So here's the way I see it, and it's just different opinions, but here's the way I see it. We all agreed that they were under a tremendous amount of third-party publisher pressure to get the price down. This mechanism of clearing out 60 gigabytes units lets them do that, because basically, as far as like accounting-wise, these units that are sitting in the channel, whether they're in a Sony warehouse or at a store, are already on the books. So they're already out there, and the sooner they can get that money back and put their cash flow back in order,
and there's
the
a
better.
lot of units in the channel.
Right. So so that's the second part. By getting these things to blip before holiday season, they can dramatically improve their installed base before those AAA titles hit this fall. Which leads to part 3, which is, and then once they have a more critical mass of users out there and great titles, say here's the 80 gig with this game packed in still. It's a great value at $5.99. Why would they need to lower the price down? They've accomplished what they wanted to. They bumped up they made the third parties happy. They have more people out there with PS3s, encouraging more people to buy PS3s, and they have a better unit.
I buy your logic up to point 3, which is it still comes back to the fact that the third parties they don't just want it to spike this year, they want persistent sales, because these things are fucking expensive to make.
Right.
Well, $2.99 is expensive.
Yeah.
$3.99 is expensive. $4.99 is expensive. That's why people are sort of saying they need to cut. And I asked Kaz, is this enough of a price cut? Now, the thing is, you have to look at, Kaz has ran SCA for a number of years. He was there for the original PlayStation launch. He launched the PlayStation 2. You have to think that this guy is not an idiot, that he understands the business. He can't be looking at sales in any territory other than day of launch, week of launch, month of launch, and thinking that these numbers are good. And that's why I'm saying, there has to be something else going on. Now, I'm not saying that my source is right. I have to run down the numbers, but clearly they know they need to goose this business, and that's why I think it's reasonable to think there's something else going on. But even $4.99 is still...
It's still pretty high.
It's still pretty high. And I'm not sure that they have the software this year to fully combat that high price. I mean, Microsoft has an insane amount of software. That was the focus of their press conference that's coming to the Xbox 360, and Nintendo's going to be chugging along with their non-games and core games and whatever else they've got. It's going to be a challenge for Sony to get this going, and that's why I think there's something else going on, but it was truly bizarre. I was stunned. It threw off my interview. I had to loop back in the end and say,
Right.
So
But in the 20 years I've been playing games, I've never seen a console go up in price. You can't introduce a new...
It's not going up in price, Shane. That's the way they're couching it. I mean, look,
right,
it's the
but
same thing.
I'm saying, in October, when there are no more 60 gigs available, I think it is incomprehensible that you will not, at any point this year, be able to go to a store and buy a PlayStation 3 for $4.99.
Well, I think it's definitely not incomprehensible. I think it's every bit believable. I think it would be absurdly stupid.
Well, yeah, and they're
but
not...
to play devil's advocate, they've already taken away the $4.99 model once before. Why would you think, based on what they've done, that they wouldn't do it again?
If you bought a 20 gig at launch, you got to be pissed right now.
That's and do they want to do that with a bigger group now? I don't know. I really think that this is a goose, like we're talking about, to get the business rolling in. But you don't want to eat. Come on, who wants to eat a price cut before you're even a year into the cycle on a machine that's costing you a ton to make?
When you're not selling any hardware,
you're not even selling any.
But they're going to have to, because the more expensive option is to keep it high priced and die on the vine. I mean, that's the alternative.
That's why I think they're counting on the goose to get sales and momentum going for them, and then they roll on that through Christmas.
I think you're on crack, Garnet.
Yeah.
That's not how price works.
I think they're going to continue to incentivize it with the Blu-ray promotion. If you look what you're doing in Europe, there's these huge bundles with 2 games and 2 6-axis controllers because it's so expensive in Europe.
Who's doing the Amazon deal here? The Amazon deal here is a pretty good deal too.
I haven't seen that deal.
Well, one thing that you might think...
You get the Blu-ray remote, and you get a Blu-ray movie, and you get the 5 Blu-ray choice thing by mail as well for the price of the PS3.
I think they're going to continue to do those kind of incentives.
Yeah, it's a great value if you've got that money to spend. I mean, but the one thing is, if you want to ascribe even more, I don't know, sinister conspiratorial motives, is, what if this is not only pleasing Kaz's corporate masters, but in a weird way signaling to consumers, look, you better run to stores and get the 60 gig SKU for $4.99 now, because it's only available while supplies last.
I think that's
so. Maybe
right.
that's kind of what you're saying, which is like you get this boom, you get this rush. I don't know how sustainable that is, but if people do consume it in that amount, then that starts to get rid of their install-based problem somewhat.
I think that's probably completely accurate. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how. We won't have to wait long. It's going to play out in just a couple of months, and we'll know for sure.
Yeah.
So there you go. I would say, and I mean, I'm going to follow my own advice. I'm buying one now, finally, and I'm buying one because at $500, it's a hell of a good Blu-ray player. I'm sorry to say that. I mean, there are games I'm excited about. I will definitely pick up Ninja Gaiden right off the bat, and what else am I going to pick up? I'm looking forward to several games this fall. But I mean,
I think this E3, a lot of people I've talked to, this is where maybe they're not going to run it by tomorrow, but the lineup here, what's coming, PSN, PS3, Blu-ray, a lot of people are convinced.
Yeah, I hit my teeter spot.
Even games like Little Big Planet, I've talked to a lot of people. That is like a system seller for a lot of people.
Oh God, yeah.
Absolutely.
That Echo Chrome trailer, I was sitting next to a number of executives from Vivendi, and they had a strong response to Echo Chrome. I mean, that was just...
I thought that game looked... I mean, I love Crush, which it has a lot in common with.
Yeah.
But I love the aesthetic of that really hot.
This is the one you were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, it's very serious and mature.
I thought it was really beautiful. And I think really imaginative. Like, Sony seems to be pushing the indie cred end of the spectrum more than anybody else right now. Like real experimental, arty kind of stuff. I'm not giving the illusion or pretending to be arty. I mean, being genuinely arty indie products being pushed through PSN.
Yeah.
On the subject of system sellers, where do you think Epic's announcement of Unreal Tournament falls into that?
I think it's pretty monumental, actually, because it plays to a group of people who aren't the PlayStation hardcore.
Right.
They're going after PC and Xbox players specifically with that exclusivity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, definitely thinking about being able to play on a PS3 in front of my television with my 5.1 surround and not really have to worry about whether or not my PC's been upgraded adequately to handle the game. I'm kind of over that whole thing, right? And the game looks fantastic. Did you check it out?
I saw it being played. Mark Rain was demoing it. I didn't play it myself. But I think it looks crazy, and I like UT. I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, it's like Gears of War quality at much bigger levels. It was, it looked pretty good, great sort of lighting and particle effects and things like that.
And another part, when they announced that at the press conference, they kind of glossed over, but it was a multi-part agreement with Epic and Sony for exclusivity. And in EGM, the rumor column we heard that one of those games could be a game set in the Gears of War universe, not Gears of War 2, because Microsoft still has that. But I really think that could happen. I think that could happen. I think we could see that
with the cogs and with the
something next year. That's what I'm saying.
Well, one thing that Mark did say is that it's not there now, but he thinks he wants to do it. So it's just a matter of what he and the team can do. Is they do want to be able to do cross-platform play.
Yep.
So PC and PS3 gamers going head to head. I don't think that's a major selling point, but it's a great talking point.
Yeah.
For them,
says, hey, right?
Yeah, for them and for Sony, and it's a bit of a stick in the eye to Microsoft that the guys who are making the biggest selling game for your platform before Halo 3 ships in Gears of War are, all mobbed up now with Sony, and it sort of gets people asking, well, why? Why couldn't this happen? And we know why it's not happening. It's still the games for Windows Live stuff that we know that Epic is opposed to, and then it's also the fact that, Microsoft's walled garden approach.
They're building it into Unreal Engine now,
into Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
That was UE3, not UT3.
Yeah.
I still think they're philosophically opposed to how Microsoft's handling games for Windows Live, but they're partners who want to do it, so they'll support it.
I think they're getting closer. So Mark and I were hanging out the other day. A guy gets around. He talks to all of us, doesn't he? It's kind of crazy. But we were hanging out talking about this subject, and then the two things that came across Well, the one thing that came across, of course, most strongly is Epic has built their company on community involvement, and they are never going to sacrifice that. They love that, and it frustrates them no end having to deal with the tightened architecture of the way Live works. And for them, Unreal Tournament on PS3, besides the fact they showed it on PS3 first, so it shouldn't have been that big of a surprise, it was a no-brainer because the network's open. And it's no big deal for them to allow people to create levels on their PCs. All they have to do is do a quick check and go, okay, can this fit in the 512 megs of RAM that the PS3 has? Okay, it does. Good, you can play it. It's that. Well, that's it. That's the whole deal.
Yeah, I think that announcement and also the NCSoft one are very aggressive, and they're specifically Sony going after Microsoft's way of doing business.
The good news for Xbox 360 owners is that we did hear, I mean, one thing Mark talked about was how he thinks that as the Live teams work through projects, like one of their projects right now, which has not gotten a lot of attention, is Live is coming to XP. And you notice the way, like, when Cliffy was on there, I loved how, like, as he's walking off the stage during the Gears thing, coming to Vista and XP.
Right. I mean, people were afraid that Gears was going to be a Vista-only game.
Right, so. And they're not going to do that.
But here's the thing. Why do you guys think Microsoft did that? Because Halo 2, if I'm not mistaken, is that...
Vista only.
Vista only.
Yes, technically, there's things you can do to it to make it run on XP.
But that's hacks.
There's hacks.
Right. So why do you think Microsoft? So like a game like that, XP. I mean Vista only.
Is it
Gears of War, which maybe could have convinced people. Okay, I'll go get is going to be XP also. What do you?
Well, there's two possibilities. I think it's a concession to Epic or a response to the relatively soft sales of Vista.
Got it.
I think it's primarily, and come on, there hasn't been that big of an uptake yet of DX10 parts. They're very expensive. I mean, Crysis is going to push that a lot, like we were talking about earlier. But I mean, I'm talking to the lead, and I'm like, what is it going to take to really run? He's like, oh, if you have a quad core with 2 gigs of memory and 8800 DX10 card, then you're probably in good shape. I'm thinking to myself, yeah,
that's a $6,000 computer.
How many people have this?
Well,
PC?
That's why we should all be savoring our chances to play Crysis at these public events. Because
right.
How many of us have PCs that can actually run it?
Dude, I don't have that sitting in my house. I don't even have that sitting in my office.
Anyone that bought a Mac laptop, recently and is savoring the boot camp experience, you're not going to play Crysis. It's not going to happen.
And you look at the statements that have come out of Crytek in the past, sort of implying that PS3 and 360 can't handle, Crysis, and that Crysis won't be coming to the consoles in this form. You're saying, like, is he just trying to scare us into spending the $6,000 to get these PCs? I don't know.
So I think you'll see 360's live environment move to make adjustments probably next year to allow user-created content to live on Marketplace. There's a number of reasons there. I mean, they have the whole XNA thing, the initiative, which will have a lot of content being generated.
We talked to Shane Kim about that as well, and he was quite dismissive of the Sony leaving it up to the publisher to police things policy. He says that we talked before the show started. We were talking with Sean about the shit that shows up on the user mods on PC, and that there are no filters on PC, and even Sony, who tries to give the illusion of keeping things open, does not want
well, look what's happening.
Levels.
Look what happens with Forza, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing with
there will be elements
racist
of
stuff
control.
out of the UK,
the booby cars,
exactly.
Right. And Unreal Tournament, you'll be able to post stuff into the system, but the UI for downloading the mods and levels will be the game, and that environment is going to be monitored by Midway and Epic first, and by Sony definitely second. Like, Sony's not going to let anything objectionable through that box. It's just going to be policed in a different way.
But first of all, game experience may change with online play, right? Yeah. But the other thing is...
Captain ESRB to the rescue.
Phil answered some questions, I think it was on 3 Speech or somewhere else, about, when we saw Home for the first time, and we saw that you could stream video into it, the first thing was, like, well...
Porn.
Porn party in John's apartment.
Yeah, baby.
And, Phil... Pretty much the way the system is architected is it doesn't sound like they're going to be checking IP to make sure, that, Savannah Sampson or someone else isn't coming through your thing. But it's basically going to be in the private rooms that you'll be able to sort of view other people's video in public areas. You won't be able to see any of that stuff.
Plus, I think there's going to be, I mean, the moderation, there's going to be flagging people, and, you know, if you get sucked into something that you don't want to, there's going to be people. I think there's going to be a narc element to home, I think.
Yeah.
Well, this guy invited me to his house, and he had porn playing on the wall.
Ultimately, though, the genie is, to some degree, out of the bottle. There is a desire in the gaming community to have still those kind of garage shop moments, and people want to create that content.
But you know what? I really don't think like Unreal Tournament on PS3 is going to be complete freedom. The way if you do it with a memory card, and like you know either you or your buddy are doing it on PC, and you hand it to each other on your hard drive, you can have the porno level or whatever the fuck you want to do. But the stuff that's going through the user-generated content that you go and browse through a year from release, when the really good modders have been doing levels, they're all going to be there. But there's not. I'd be very surprised if the PS3 version had anything offensive.
So, you know, something else we've talked about with regard to Live as a weakness is the lack of dedicated servers for Xbox 360 games. And I happened across Frontline, Fuels of War, in the THQ booth, and it said, you know, for 1 to 32 players. And I said, oh, this is PC version. How many is the 360 version going to support? And he said, oh, it's going to support 32 players. And I asked, well, how are you going to do that in peer-to-peer? He's like, we're not peer-to-peer. So there's the answer. The answer is finally out there. The first game that I know of that's going to have dedicated servers on Xbox Live will be Frontline, Fuels of War.
And Midway is hosting those servers.
Absolutely, right. And they are running them on PC versions that are compatible
THQ.
with...
THQ
is hosting those servers. They'll be running on PCs. It makes the game... You know, apparently, there was even, at one point in time, an argument with, the marketing department. Why can't we just use the regular Live service or whatever? Why do we have to pay for this? And the guys are like, because we're making a Battlefield-style game. It has to have 32 players.
Now that we know that exists, what about the perpetual rumor that Halo 3 will have dedicated servers?
I'd say that perpetual rumor, there's probably a lot of stock in it, because if they're letting a third party do it, how crazy would it be for Frontline, Fuels of War to have dedicated servers and this great online experience, and Halo 3 be peer-to-peer?
As you and I both said, you're paying for this, you should at least get top quality.
Well, and I'm not going to stop beating that drum. There were people who were saying, oh, it's only $50, or it's only how much a month, and you're crazy. I know. Paying to play games online is got to get back to do it some way else. There's lots of ways to support those models, but charging me a annual fee to have a Live membership, unless you're going to really provide me something other than a gamer tag and some points.
Especially when you're paying to be served ads as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so there's some other games that I think could be big PS3 system sellers, and you, Wayne, are one of the few people in Santa Monica who actually held the controller and played some Killzone.
I think you're the only person that I know of.
There's someone else, but that person will remain nameless.
Because I got to go to the special showing where the producer played through the entire level in front of us live, and that was cool enough. But you actually got to play that level.
I did get to play that level. So it's as intense as it was when we saw it in the theater. It's there's just a lot going on. The challenge I have with these next generation games, the top of the line ones, is there's I'm still dealing with the transition, and it's still sometimes you just feel like there's so much more information than you're used to seeing in the old generation games that I'm still having trouble processing it all. So you're just
all the subtle stuff. When I was watching that, I would try to catch little pieces of things swaying and moving around, and when they shot a chair and the physics is flying everywhere, things of the wall are falling off, and
dude, you can shoot off individual tiles. There's I don't know if you remember that area where you came into, it was like two balconies separated by an alley, and there's a bit of a firefight across them. Well, some of the Helghast are hiding behind these almost makeshift metal shield things. You can shoot that away and then take them down behind it. So there's all of this stuff going on. But one of the things I focused on in the preview that I wrote was the post-processing effects that they're doing. So there's some people who, obviously the Killzone 2 trailer and demo got really positive response. But there's some people who are critical of the art style, and I think there's Halo is a very visually inviting game because they use those bright colors, those purples and greens and things that pull you in. And this is a very muted color palette, and there are a lot of games that have a muted color palette. And so Killzone gets lumped in with some of those games. And I'm sort of paying attention to these games and how they do what they're doing. So one of the things they showed me that first, hit the beach, hit the city square, and you have that first firefight in the demo. They paused it and showed it to me with the post-processing filters turned off. Right? So just what it would look like lit with the lighting in the game. And it was actually sunnier. You know what I'm saying? There were these tones and things that You're like, that doesn't look like what I saw. And then they turn it on again, and all of a sudden it's like really oppressive, you know? And
well, it is set on the Helghast home planet. It's like mechanized, like shanty town, very depressing and cloudy, and it's evocative, but it does look kind of muted and gray. You know, the game looks gray.
And that's when you realize
all this esoteric stuff. No, hands on. I want to know what it feels like.
Well, the reload animations were like one of the best things I saw. They were
control, and the fact that it gets out of focus and everything.
Oh, and the motion blur. I mean, it's a lot of the little touches, but like, how does it feel?
I saw this thing. The control is the most important part of a shooter. How does it feel? Is it on yet? Have they got the controls right?
Movement feels good. Turning feels good. The cover stuff is awesome. It's good. It's very good.
And there's Blind Fire.
Blind Fire, yeah. So basically what they did is they the same guy who coded the cover and fire system in Killzone Liberation for PSP, which I always sort of described as like Gears of War top down on your PSP. I mean, it kind of like felt good. The same guy coded it for Killzone 2. And so what he did was took the model, the 3D model, and animated it that way, and then once he got that nailed down, switched into first person view and like tweaked and messed with it until it works. So what you can do is you go up to a point where you can grab cover and you hold down L2. Well, you crouch and hold down L2. L2 sort of is what snaps you into cover, and I can't remember if it was like hold or toggle. I think it was toggle. And then you can if you just fire from the cover position, you'll blind fire. You'll see your gun sort of come up over the berm or whatever you're behind and like shoot at the enemies and kind of spray. But if you push forward on the left analog stick, then it'll pop you up over cover. If you push left, it'll push you left around cover.
It's a little like the Rainbow Six Vegas system,
except it doesn't take you out of it doesn't put you into third person mode to do it.
Oh, okay.
And I think if they design firefights around that mechanic in part, I think that's going to be really compelling because I'm like a more hang back and sort of take guys out kind of guy rather than run and gun. And if they can really nail that and build some stuff around it, though I should think without requiring it, because I would want the game to be able to support guys who like to run and gun.
Does it feel like Gears in first person?
It still feels different from Gears. It's hard to put my finger on it, and say like what it still feels different from Gears. Mm-hmm. That's as much as I can say right now. It doesn't feel like Gears in first person because the roadie run is such an essential part of the Gears mechanic and slamming into cover. Cliffy described Gears as sort of like a horizontal platformer, which is a really true description of the game, and this is not that. This is something else, and Guerrilla's still feeling its way in terms of like they still haven't really forcefully imposed themselves on the gaming world. So I think it's going to take some time for even us to figure out like what is it? What do these guys do? What kind of games do they really make? So I can't really compare it to something else other than maybe some of the Medal of Honor games, the original Medal of Honor games.
When they were good.
Exactly.
Actually, to go off topic, I hear that Medal of Honor Airborne is actually good now, but nobody cares. Like, they've cried wolf a million times, no one pays any attention. But I hear the latest rev is actually doing some really creative stuff. And
that could actually work out well for them.
The demo looked nice.
Do you guys remember? Any of you guys go to the Gamers Day that EA had a few weeks back where they showed it?
No, I didn't.
So there's this. I had the same thing, like visual fatigue, because it's World War II, and you're like. Seen that before. There's a level that is the last level in the game, and it's apparently historically based. It's some massive German concrete tower that looks like almost bleached white, and there's like guys in the top, and it's like sniping at you as you're coming down through the air, and if you can land on the roof you can enter it that way and sort of go down and clear it, or if you land on the ground you can go up and clear it. It looks like nothing you've ever seen before out of World War II. And when I was over there, I was talking to those guys and saying, you need to show that. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because at least snippets of it in the trailers, because that's the one thing you're going to be like, I've never seen that before in World War II. I haven't seen that before in Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. It doesn't bore you. The other stuff, I think the whole parachuting mechanic is great, but it's World War II. You still feel like the fatigue, but
I think the same problem is facing Brothers in Arms. These games both look really good, but there's so many other things that are new and fresh that they just kind of get overlooked.
Oh, dude, Brothers in Arms is amazing.
Yeah, but like, come on. But are you seeing it on lots of best lists? No one. It's a great game. That's a great series.
It would definitely be on my best list. Oh. It would definitely be on my best list.
I'm glad you're talking about it.
Yeah.
Because those guys at Gearbox, Randy, they're a really great team.
Well, I think what they did about this version of that game is that they focused a lot on the through-the-gun experience of shooting, which wasn't as high a priority before. And really, it's as much a case of like the technology has come along far enough that they can now really incorporate a good shooter game with the good tactical action part of the game. You take the way that they're able to bust up the environment and use cover and use tactics, and you've got a game that is really, really engrossing and really gets you in the like, you feel like you're in the thick of the shit in that game, really, to the extent of you feel like you're right there and these guys are around you, and if you're not making the right choices, they are dying.
Well, it's funny, we kind of segued away from Killzone, but we're talking about these games that are getting overlooked at E3 that are really good games, and that's kind of how I felt when I was walking around the Barker Hangar. I kept seeing games that used to be games that would go on covers and people cared about, like Mercenaries 2 or these games we're talking about, and like nobody's talking about them because there's so many great games here.
Dude, Ace Combat 6 can't buy a word.
Right.
John, you were talking about Burnout.
Burnout's on one pod. There's one copy of Burnout Paradise here, and it's stunning.
Yeah.
I mean, like for me, like personally,
we spooged about it yesterday.
Yeah, we spooged about it yesterday. I mean, it's probably my personal game of the show. Like the game that I'm really looking forward to putting on at home. I think it's fantastic.
I really question some of the decisions that EA made about which games to put in Barker Hangar and which ones to put in Lamerigo, because they
had the family version, the family thing on Wii of Madden. They had the Carnival game. No, it was Carnival game with Barker, right?
The Boogie.
They had Boogie, Rock Band. I mean, you could see, honestly, because the first thing you saw when you went in, if I'm not mistaken, was their casual games.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So clearly EA's caught religion on casual games.
Big time.
But the thing is, at least they should have had suites at the they should have had suites at Lamerigo, where they had their their hall, where Alex could have been with Burnout, and
everyone
Chavac
that's
could have
seen
been
Burnout,
with,
and particularly anyone that's picked it up and played it, has been like, oh my god, they've really moved the needle on this thing. It's fantastic.
Well, we'll get to Rock Band in a second, but I want to mention what I think is EA's biggest misstep, which was not showing the Spielberg Next Gen project, which is known as LMNOP. That's what its code name.
LMNO.
LMNO. There's a screenshot of it in Newsweek, and it's the game that's being described as Eco meets North by Northwest. And it's a story of, like, you're a regular guy, and you get this alien girl from outer space comes, and you're on the run through America. You're being pursued by somebody. And the screenshot, it shows just the girl. She's, like, holding a puppy, and she's at, a rundown hotel. And it looks really interesting and evocative. And you hear about this game, and you talk to people working on it, and it sounds really amazing.
Yeah.
And, the eco thing plays into the game journalist, mentality completely. I think they could have possibly stolen E3 had they showed it in the way.
There's also
they can't show it.
EAP is doing
it's in the first stage of they sort of explained to me when I went to visit them that there's 2 stages of pre-production, and I think they're just wrapping the first stage, so it's not.
But like a teaser to get us all excited, I think they could have done something.
There's a concept art teaser that they have in house, but they don't want to show that. They know you want gameplay.
EAP is doing the next DICE game as well. It's called like Mirror Edge, I think.
Yes.
Or something. Is that what it's called? Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like got lots of like free running type mechanics, but in first person, and it's like a really different take on being able to do an action game in first person that's not necessarily
shooter based. Have you had a chance to see it?
Didn't show that either.
No.
Oh, okay. You knew it really quick. I thought you might have had a chance.
No, I haven't had a chance to see Mirror's Edge.
But again, it's an unusual choice. Like the people that have seen it have been like, oh my god, you got to, this game sounds like such an amazing and like different take on taking a look and feel of a game that that is very expected, but throwing a completely different gameplay mechanic at it.
So we were talking about the forgotten games of E3, and I mean this is kind of building on something I was thinking as far as like.
Turn your damn ringer off.
It is off. I have no idea why it rang. I turned it to silent a minute ago. The whole thought of why I thought that Medal of Honor not being on people's radar anymore might be a good thing for them, because it gives them the opportunity to do what they did originally, which is surprise you. If they have the tower thing, that's really cool. And maybe some of these other games, maybe being forgotten right now, it will work out for the ones that are potential AAAs, because they'll be able to surprise you. But that doesn't really match what they want to do marketing-wise, because if you're making a AAA title, you want to have the word out there, you want to have people buying it, and it puts them in a tough situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but at least they are focusing on Rock Band, which I think a lot of people might nominate for Game of the Show.
I might, yeah. I'm thinking.
So I was over there earlier on, and there was a guy that who. I mean, he wasn't a professional drummer. He was a guy who.
Come on, Garnet. Silence that
cut it
thing.
out.
Jesus. Throw it away.
who he plays drum. He's been playing drums for 15 years. He was a journalist. I'm not sure where he was from, but he sat down. They were playing the Nirvana song, and
on hard, right?
And he was playing it on hard.
So we've always heard that on hard, playing the drums in Rock Band is like really playing the drums.
Well, this guy was banging the shit out of that drum kit, like a real drummer. It wasn't like watching a gamer trying to hit the drums. He was playing the drums, and the thing wasn't wobbling, it wasn't shaking, it was taking this incredible beating that he was giving.
Well, you said he even stopped watching the on-screen indicators.
He stopped watching the game, and he was just playing the drums. It's like, when you watch someone play karaoke and they know the song off by heart, and they're just singing along with it. This guy was playing the drums along with it.
Well, there's been a lot of Guitar Hero 3 versus Rock Band, and actually EGM's Michael Donahoe made a really great
this
comment
was fantastic.
this morning. He's like, Guitar Hero 3 is Megadeth to Rock Band's Metallica.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue against that because Rock Band has unleashed so much, and they have so much, both they have drums, they have singing, they have this whole
drums
package.
Might be its Achilles heel though.
Really?
Because I think everyone wants to play drums.
When the drums are the most expensive peripheral.
Yeah. But I think you see, all I've heard, people say, have you seen Rock Band? Oh, it's awesome, it's awesome, it's awesome. Have you seen the drum kit? Have you seen anyone playing the drum? Everyone is fixated on the drum. No one cares about the karaoke part. Well, it'll be popular.
It's funny, Brian was like, why'd they even include it? I'm like, well, why not? Karaoke Revolution is a popular franchise.
Yeah.
People want to sing. Why not include more content? Why be upset?
It's a rock band.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to have the singer. I mean, you don't have to.
And you play tambourine with it. That's badass.
Don't underestimate Guitar Hero 3, though. I mean, I think that we were very quick to say, oh, Rock Band's very pretty and it looks cool, and then to say, oh, goodbye to Guitar Hero 3. Dude, I played Guitar Hero 3.
Of course it's still solid, and of course it's going to outsell Rock Band, I guarantee that. But once you play that, it's hard to go back.
Yeah, and I think logically, I mean, we've made this argument before. Logically, there's a lot of power to the Guitar Hero brand, but I think there's an emotional thing with Rock Band that once you've seen it, the best possible thing, EA needs to get Rock Band in front of as many people as possible. They need to be going on, I think they should have. I think the release date's in a funny place because what they should have done is they should have had a Rock Band promo truck on every big fucking summer tour this year, like the Warped Tour, Ozfest, everything, with people and have the bands come out and do stuff, and then have people go up there and do stuff, and just have Rock Band at all these events.
It's the beginning of a huge franchise. I mean, I don't think this is the last we've seen of Rock Band.
No, and if this had been last year's E3, where you had the two halls and it was convention center and whatnot, the old E3. If this had been there, you walk right into South Hall and the first thing you see is EA's booth, and they'd had it set up in the middle there and had people rocking out and whatnot, it would have been to this year's E3 what the Wii was to last year, and there would have been no way that you could have left E3 talking about Guitar Hero 3 instead of Rock Band.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, just seeing it, it's the fantasy fulfilled.
Yeah. You won't talk about it instead, but Guitar Hero 3 does have a lot going for it. First of all, the guitar battles are a lot of fun. And the fact that Slash went into the studio and recorded all original material for his battle. When you battle Slash, you're actually playing a two-sided song, or two-sided guitar jam that Slash went into a studio and recorded specifically for this game with him dueling himself on guitar, and that's what you're playing. That is really, really cool. And the way the mechanic works of, using your star power, but instead of becoming star power being an attack that you throw at the other person's fretboard is really cool. And the concerns about Neversoft taking the game and whether or not it would work and they could make a game, I can tell you, I can just lay it to rest right now. I was actually surprised because in prior years when we've seen early builds of Guitar Hero games, it was hard to get a feel for how well they would play because they typically had, some frame rate issues, they hadn't come up to speed, they were synced, they would change their note tracking around. The demo that they had here for Guitar Hero 3 was fully realized. It had great sound mix.
They take you into a room and tweak your nipples or something?
I think they
had a good time playing it.
Guitar Hero is fun. They've done a great job emulating a very successful franchise. Meanwhile,
the note tracking is, dude.
Meanwhile,
like guitar.
Shut up. Meanwhile, the people who made this game, they made the real evolution, and that's Rock Band.
And the problem.
More instruments makes it better.
Yes.
Well, here's the one thing that's interesting is that Neversoft sort of took it and made it more of a gamer game.
It's a game now, yeah.
Yeah,
whereas Rock Band is just being a rock star.
Yeah, and if you look at the elements, some of the things they put in, being able to attack your opponent, that's stuff that Harmonix was doing in Amplitude.
Right.
So it was interesting to see that stuff. I was like, that looks familiar. I don't mean in a rip-off kind of way. I mean, I really like what Neversoft's done with it, and I think that stuff's interesting, but the danger and what Activision has to look out for is Guitar Hero became a hit because there were some core gamers who latched onto it and told their friends, they brought their friends onto it and played it, and it sort of built up steadily through that. You know, it was like the game of the people. I think the same influencers that made Guitar Hero a hit are going to move over.
Oh, the tastemakers
are going to move on to it. And it doesn't mean, because playing guitar is still fun, it doesn't mean that people won't buy both. But I think the thing is, it's like, it's going to be like the Wii. It's like when you have the opportunity to either just go guitar, right, you know, head-to-head in Guitar Hero,
or guitar and bass.
Or to break out the whole thing and everyone's collaborating on the same thing. To me, that's more of the fantasy. That it's like Guitar Hero is the game, Rock Band's the fantasy.
Which is cool, and I'm not saying that I don't like Rock Band better for a number of reasons, like predominantly
we understand.
because of the music.
Right, none of us think Guitar Hero 3 is bad.
But I want to make sure and get out there and say, you know, don't take a dump on Guitar Hero 3 too early, because my biggest concerns were easily addressed when I played it. Besides, they have like over 50% of their songs are now master tracks. They got Living Colour into the studio to actually do Cult of Personality over again with Vernon Reid like, oh, yeah, I'm going to make the guitar solo harder. And it's totally crazy. And I would say the note tracking, you can tell that someone different than Harmonix did it, because they've done things that Harmonix didn't do, and it, for better or for worse, like part of the deal is they went to one of the big Guitar Hero sites, and they got some of those guys who are like the very, very, you know, Jedi master guitar players to help them work on note tracking, and there are a couple passages where, like in those songs, it really felt more like playing guitar because they were doing different moves on the fretboard that I hadn't done before, and I played a lot of Guitar Hero.
Do the guitars in both games have the same buttons in the same place?
Yes and no.
Because it's going to really suck if the same guitar doesn't work in both games. I know you're going to want to buy the Stratocaster
but as I understand, the Guitar Hero guitar works with Rock Band. However,
but are the colors in the same place?
The colors are in the same place, yes. However, there are additional buttons on the Guitar Hero guitar that are down near the base of the neck.
The Rock
Band guitar for additional. So I think that way you can do, in these crazy solos, you can do these hammer-ons and hammer-offs in different ways. And I'm not sure exactly because I don't play it on that level.
So potentially you could buy the Rock Band guitar and play that on both. But the Guitar Hero guitar is not going to deliver on Rock Band.
Not completely.
Well, I think it's cool. Obviously, the music genre all of a sudden just completely erupted.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like been on that teeter-totter for a long time of karaoke revolutions and stuff, but now it's like...
Guitar Freaks? Like, why is Konami sitting this out?
God. The guy that didn't bring Guitar Freaks to the US has got to be like...
I also think Nintendo is dropping the ball, because they could have had some sort of Wii Music game. We saw, that really simple orchestra thing last year.
Where's that?
Yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity, considering how broad and mass their appeal is.
The Wii guitar for Guitar Hero 3 is kind of funny. It has like you flip the guitar over, and there's a door on the back of the guitar that you open and drop the Wiimote into the guitar.
I don't understand why you have to do that. Why isn't it just a wireless guitar?
It saves money.
It's a cheaper device.
Yeah.
Yeah, they use all the functionality that's built.
And you might be able to use it for the tilt functionality and some other things.
I was thinking ZZ Top spins.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, I like that.
Yeah.
One more game I want to make sure we get to before we start talking about, like wrap up and games of the show and all that kind of stuff is Fallout 3. And you went and saw it, and apparently they have a beautiful theater complete with theatrical chairs and everything.
It was just the trailer, though, right?
No,
it was new stuff.
It was showing aspects of fairly early on in the game and whatnot. Now I have to confess, the complete disclosure, I did fall asleep.
Was it warm and dark?
And you're not the first journalist that told me that in that theater, in those chairs, which are apparently very comfortable, that you went to sleep.
Let me make it clear: this is in no way casting aspersions against Bethesda or their fantastic game. And it was one of those kind of falling asleep where I didn't even know I'd fallen asleep until I woke up. So it wasn't like I caught myself, I'm falling asleep. What I saw looked phenomenal. I mean, that game just, the art direction, the whole targeting system, like turn-based sort of combat.
I'm so bummed I didn't get over this. It was one of the things I was really looking forward to seeing while I was here.
They're just doing some fantastic stuff. And the thing is, it's like, I never got into Oblivion in part because I'm not really a sword and sorcery kind of guy. Men in Tights isn't my thing, but Fallout might be my first game of my first Bethesda, full-on RPG game. I want to get into it. And it's just... they're just doing very cool stuff. The only thing I wish they had changed, and like I know we've got some Mass Effect fans among you, so you'll probably feel the same way, is the conversations still have the person looking dead on at you. And
does it still have that weird, creepy Oblivion face where you're like,
symmetrical faces?
Yeah, some. It's just Mass Effect is just so powerful the way they're doing those cutscenes, and I don't understand why. But people will be glad to know, and I think it's been reported that they support, full-on 3D, like a third-person perspective. So you can pull the camera back. I think you can even adjust how far back you send it, so you could almost like play it Gears of War / RE4 style.
I mean, it's a new development team. Do they accurately capture that weird mix of like post-apocalyptic despair and weird humor that Fallout's known for?
Yes. I mean, they're doing it. Now, I'm not a longtime Fallout fan, and I'm sure those guys are, burning, Bethesda in effigy somewhere, but what I saw is going to be strong.
Well,
I think Bethesda's going to have another huge hit on their
hands. I think longtime Fallout fans were already burned by the really shitty PS2 and Xbox Fallout games, so this should be a return to form.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, it's a much different style, though. I mean, first person or third person, the engine that Oblivion was built on, is not going to give you the same sort of mix of tactical combat and command that Fallout gave you when you were actually in the battle. But if they get the atmosphere right, I think that would go a long way.
They nailed the atmosphere, but the tactical stuff, and unfortunately, I was starting to fall asleep. Is you can target individual parts of the bodies and things like that. So it just has a nice feel, and it just feels very integrated, very seamless. I think people are going to be, I would say even to the Fallout haters or the Fallout 3 haters who are Fallout fans, give it a chance. Pay attention to it, because I think the game's going to be pretty special.
That's cool. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be hearing a lot of wrap-ups on all this stuff. So I guess as we pull our show here to the finish line, let's do a little wrap-up kind of. You wanted to do a dual thing, right, John?
Yeah, I want to do what you think is going to be, the game of the show, just from just being as observers of the industry. What do you think everyone's going to glom onto? And then what I want to hear from each of you is what is the game that really spoke to you individually, like the thing that you're really looking forward to getting home. I mean, it could be the same thing, but I think there are games that you can appreciate on a sort of broader level and just say, okay, well, that's probably the most powerful thing here, like something like Rock Band or whatever. Who wants to start?
Kick it off, Shane?
I'll start. Okay, so if I'm going to say the game of show in terms of overall importance and like coming out of E3, what the real takeaway is, I almost want to say Wii Health. And I played it, and I was a huge skeptic. I mean, like Nintendo, it was their big focus at the end of their press conference, and it kind of struck a sour.
Wii Fit?
Wii Fit, I'm sorry.
What did you call it?
Wii Health. I hate the name Wii Fit. Like, it should be Wii Fitness. Because fit is not a noun. It's adjective. Anyway, it was Nintendo's big focus, and it kind of went over like a lead balloon with enthusiast gamers, and like, where's my Kid Icarus? But after I actually played it, I found it weirdly engaging and addictive. And I do want to play it again, and I think it's perfectly in line with what Nintendo is doing, that's so successful and reaching other consumers. And I was talking to someone at a party last night, who they said, like, this is, like Sony had that Nike game, the iToy Nike, I don't even forget what it's called, Kinetic. A year ago, and like nobody cared.
Right.
And Microsoft had that game. They didn't publish it, but it was on Xbox. I forget what it was called.
Right, like an aerobics or fitness.
Aerobic thing that's kind of creepy.
Right, exactly.
And Nintendo even had a dance aerobics game for their Power Pad and NES some 15 plus years ago. But finally, like the industry and like soccer moms and alpha moms have caught up with games, and I think that as much as we always say, Wii's all for soccer moms, but it really is, and this is an important turning point. So
it's the right time to do it, because the whole world is caught up in the whole Wii like reality distortion field, where anything associated with it seems to get more attention.
Exactly. And I am a big Wii Sports fan, and while playing it, it did feel like Wii Sports 2 in a lot of ways.
Wasn't a lot of what you're talking about, though, why you thought that DS would be so big at the show? And DS, what happened?
Well, they didn't show anything, and like some of the exciting games like Professor Layton weren't even here, so. But there were some interesting third-party DS games here that you wouldn't expect. Like, people come up and say, "Oh, the Daffy Duck game is actually really good." And like, really?
That's not something you hear.
You don't hear that every day. Whatever,
dude. The Daffy Duck game. I mean, it was just. And when I first saw it, I was trying to figure out, well, what's the guts? Like, if you strip away the stuff that's on top, the stuff that really makes it awesome.
Yeah.
What is it? It's kind of Nintendogs in the sense that it's sort of like direct manipulation of a character, though it's you don't have as much leeway with the relationship, but just the idea that Daffy is self-aware, he knows he's in a video game, you can erase his body, draw in a new body, you're antagonizing him.
So it's like postmodern Daffy Duck.
Did you try putting the Wii in sleep mode?
Genius.
They had to get special permission from Nintendo to do that.
Why don't you explain it?
Why you explain it?
Okay, so what you do is that there's this part where Daffy's trying to capture someone in the dark, and he needs you to help him do it. And so what you have to do is close the lid, and you're listening to it on earphones or through the speakers, and then he says to the left, and you hit the left button, and to the right, and it's just sort of like this thing, but you're playing with the lid closed.
Whoa!
And then you open it up, and the reason Nintendo had to give them special dispensation is because when you close it, it's supposed to go to sleep mode. And so for this thing, and it's just, honestly, like, people need to pay attention to that
Yeah, you
game.
get a huge grin on your face. Yeah, it's
super
it's
cool.
very outside
And
the box.
animations are sick
Yeah.
on the Wii screen, like whatever
DS.
they've the DS screen. Sorry, what they've done. It just looks like
Who's publishing it?
so Warner Brothers is
Yeah.
publishing it, and then it's Way Forward
Okay.
is the developer.
Is
So,
it-
We're also making Contra.
Is it this year?
I believe,
yes,
I believe
yes,
so.
it's this year. The other one, and I know some of your listeners will be both skeptical and weirdly fascinated. Hannah Montana DS.
Yeah.
Part 2.
That's it. Yeah.
Hannah, that game.
John's grinning.
He's onto something.
That
Oh my!
game-
It's
that
gonna
game-
be fucking huge.
That game is no joke. That game is no joke.
Well,
so
she's no joke. She's huge. She outsold Kelly Clarkson. Like, you know,
So let's explain to the people who are listening, because they're probably thinking right now that we're like
they're
smoking something really
they're
good.
unsubscribing from this podcast right now.
What it is it's a guitar game for the DS. So back before GDC, I got like a little exclusive from Ubisoft about the
Guitar Jam session.
Jam
Yeah,
session
Jam session.
from Ubisoft. The way Ubisoft did that game, in partner with their Japanese development team, is it's a single string that goes across the screen, and you pick that, which means that you have to do all these weird contortions with the D-pad and the shoulder buttons in order to get the different chords. It's very cool, very powerful, and it's only acoustic. Hannah Montana Jam Sessions has, I'm going to get this wrong because I don't really play guitar, but like however many strings you have on a guitar, like six, there you go, 6 string. So it's got all 6 strings. You can pluck them individually.
Wow.
You can strum across the whole set. You can do lead guitar, bass guitar, rhythm guitar, and drums.
I can't believe I want to play a Hannah Montana game.
You can record.
You can be in her band.
You record each track individually and then play them back together. I was shocked.
It's actually a very complex, it's a very complex experience that, because it's got the Hannah Montana gloss over it, is going to go way broader than it would if they released it as you know,
Rock Band DS.
Rock Band DS. Well, actually not that, because they would have the Rock Band brand. But if it was just like some kind of music game,
Right. Yeah.
it would be like a curio, and it would be like, this is like a really clever use of DS technology, and no one would buy it.
But it's a huge-
But it's
huge
Hannah
license.
Montana, so everyone that bought Hannah Montana 1, which is like 4 million people or something insane, are going to want to play this game.
That's amazing.
You know, and I know that more people are going to buy that than are going to buy Jam Sessions.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the Disney people, they know they've got something special, and they won't give any specifics, but they are already thinking about other brands they can put on top of it to make it
Yes.
appeal more
There's going
to
to be
a male audience, or
a
older
boy
audience.
version of it, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that was a strange digression into non-games and kid games. So yeah, back to we fit as my choice for like the overall consensus.
What's your emotional choice?
My emotional choice is Little Big Planet. Like, you know, the more I think about it, the more I had so much fun. I felt like a little kid again, you know, like in a huge toy box, just doing whatever I want, building things. The idea of playing with you three, inviting you into my room, hey, let's make a level and play. I can imagine doing that to the wee hours of the night and every night. Seriously, I think it's a huge new idea.
Yeah, I mean, we
Amazing.
talked about this last night, and she was like, no,
Still a
no,
skeptic.
no, no,
He's still a
he's still a skeptic.
Yeah.
But I think when that game comes out, I could see that being in my PS3 more than anything else, definitely.
Yeah. So that's mine.
How about you, Guy?
I would say, so before I came to the show, I thought it was going to be between Rock Band and Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare. And having had hands-on with Little Big Planet today, and then also getting sort of like a breakout session where the guys working on the game talked about it, I would say that I would have to give it to Little Big Planet by a nose. I just think that the deep level of thought that's gone into it, I mean, it's just such a well-conceived game. The interface works really well. It's like action-level design, cooperative, platforming. I don't know. It's just.
And
it's
that
just,
game's biggest problem is it's being launched when the device is $599.
It is. It is.
What do you know?
Well, but you know, it's it's evolving. It's a start. And if you talk to those guys, it's almost like they're inviting everyone to come join the development process with them. It's a big adventure.
It's not almost like that is what they are doing.
Yeah,
that is what
let's hope the price drops so more people can join in.
It's a grand adventure. We don't know where it's going to go.
Seriously. So I mean,
is that your personal choice, or is that you think the big picture choice?
I think it's the big picture choice too, because you look at what I'll get to the back. I'll come back to that with my honorable mention, because I want to say what my personal choice is Everyday Shooter for PSN. So I'm one of those guys who's blistering his thumbs. When you guys had your, they had the show where you guys were talking about
Stardust HD.
Super Stardust HD, I was like nodding at home listening to it because love that game, burns my thumbs. But as much as I love Super Stardust HD and I love that game, I love Rez, I love Every Extend Extra, and Everyday Shooter just pushes all my buttons, like the art school side of me and the music side. And it's this weird sort of disjunct between doing something you do all the time in twin stick shooters, which is shoot stuff, and then have these different sounds that come out of it. So when you're wailing on something and it sounds like you're like doing a guitar riff, I mean, it's just this synchronicity that's really powerful. And then on top of it, the vector art style, which is just kind of, so it looks like this weird like modern art kind of stuff. And then the fact that each level, the cool thing about twin stick shooters is you hit a point once you've got it, is you just zone out kind of. You just move and shoot, and you're just kind of like looking, and your brain's almost not active, right? With this, there's almost 2 stages to each level, because the chain system is different for each level. So it's almost like each level is its own game, its own twin stick shooter game. So what you have to do, the first part is exploration. It's really figuring out what are the rules for this level.
That's cool.
And then once you have that, then you can zone out. And so it's almost like this bifurcated experience, and that just spoke to me.
That's really cool sounding.
The honorable mention, not even honorable mention, it's like special citation, special jury prize, is the camera, the recording system in Halo 3.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's absolutely mind-blowing. And so that was what I was going to get back to with this whole user-created stuff. I hope, not every shooter is going to warrant it, because not every shooter is going to be that powerful, but I really hope a lot of developers think about ripping off that whole recording system, because you can record campaign, you can record multiplayer. I asked Frank O'Connor how much data it was, because I'm figuring, knowing what little I know about how games are architected, you don't need to send the whole video.
Right, just
send the data.
It's just the movement data,
5 megabyte files.
Wow.
Right.
So like that kind of thing. So tapping into the whole YouTube, MySpace, all that stuff that Riccatello was saying at the start of the week that games have to compete with. Well, games can compete with that and bring that interactivity to the table. So I think...
And personalize it.
And, so... We were talking about, the downloads, the mods in Unreal Tournament and that kind of thing. You can create your own stickers in Little Big Planet and that kind of stuff. So I think Little Big Planet definitely signals something big.
Yeah.
And even if it's not ultimately the huge success because of the high PS3 price, it'll still have an impact on the industry, because they were saying even within Sony and just other developers that are making drinks, they want to do stuff. So imagine Sackboy running around with a Helgen helmet, or sort of like the sword from Heavenly Sword.
Well, the guys at Media Molecule said that teams within Sony are coming up and be like, I want to make a level set, an item set based on our game. I think most Sony franchises, you're going to see that. Actually.
That's really cool too.
Yeah.
This can be really weird when you have when they go really deep into the IP that they own. You have the Little Big Planet Lemmings level, and
Dude, you can do all that stuff. You can make a tank and
then give it to your friends.
Friends, and just, honestly, it's just... It's so mind-blowing. I'm
got the choir
now.
You fully have the choir in this room.
It's how I felt when I saw Spore for the first time. But it's weird because Spore, because it literally is like world creature, and it feels bigger. But when you start thinking of the implications of what you can do with Little Big Planet, it's like jumping inside your own Saturday morning cartoon and make it the way you want.
Well, we talked about this at GDC the same way. I think a lot of people look at it and this is where I think where we butt heads with Shu on it, and Shu looks at it as the game that you play.
Right.
And we're all looking at it
that.
as the process of... It's almost irrelevant once you get to the game part. Because it's almost... I could see getting to a point where you build something and refine it and tweak it, and you play it through a couple of times, and then it's the sort of... that's your gift to the community, and you move on to the next thing.
Getting there is most of the fun, actually. I'm not saying that a level in Little Big Planet is going to be as good as the best level you've played in Super Mario Brothers.
Right.
No.
But she was like, the levels look like it's just a charge to the finish. And I'm like, I don't really care.
Well,
but
someone's going to recreate Super Mario Brothers in Little Big Planet.
Hold on one second. I don't think that the playing part of it is that is that small a part of it.
No, I'm not saying. I'm
It's
saying
just they're not talking about it.
For me personally,
They
it's
said
like,
that today in their breakout session. It's just that they're not talking about it.
Yeah.
So one example they gave is you can set a start point and a finish point in the level. When someone runs past it, it triggers a stopwatch. So it will time the best times, or whatever time you get, will automatically be posted as a leaderboard for your level.
Cool.
And they said you can attach the finish point or the start point to a moving object in the game, such that part of the whole thing is chasing the finish line through the level.
Well, another thing, I mean, they haven't shown yet, and they're going to show at TGS, are enemies. So there's a lot.
And when you create something, that elevates the enjoyment from getting into it.
And just that show. There's sharing online, but I think the other thing is you're going to be able. The people in your house, you're going to be able to say, "Look what I made," and people that don't give a shit about video games are going to look at it, and it looks so awesome, and and it's going to be like, "Wow, you did that!" And they're going to sit down next to you and show me how you did that, and it's going to draw people in.
I agree. You want me to pick up next?
Yeah,
then?
you next.
So I think there's going to be a lot of talk about the technical impressiveness of the shooters from, Crysis obviously blowing people away, Call of Duty 4 in its presentation, and Killzone obviously, which made a great showing. But I don't know that just that technical glamour anymore is going to get it done. I'm going to say that what you came into the show thinking was going to be Rock Band is amazing. And
after all your Guitar Hero support?
Dude, I was just keeping it real with Guitar Hero. I was keeping it real to the extent that Guitar Hero is still a fun game to play, but Rock Band is a tremendous evolution of it. And most importantly to me, as someone who loves playing Guitar Hero, the music deals that they have in place,
full albums,
make this game a behemoth.
Yeah,
it is going
Metallica.
It is going to steamroll through the market.
If I can go out and buy my favorite albums, that's brilliant.
The amount of money they will be able to take from me on a weekly basis is stupid. It's just stupid.
You're going to spend $5,000 on Rock Band.
And the record industry has got to love it, because this is stuff that they can, it's their catalog.
Yep.
I mean, the thing.
They'll sell it to you again.
Well, the reason that they don't show catalog sales on the 100, top 100 charts is because catalog sales outsell most albums, like on a regular week. Mm-hmm. But they'll be able to monetize that stuff. But the other thing that's interesting, little slight digression, is that you see, like, I know Motley Crue did this, and other bands do it, is they'll re-record their own hits and sell them, because they can cut out the record label of, like, most of that deal if they re-record the album. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're going to see a lot of these bands, because you were talking about, like, Slash doing his own things. Like, imagine re-recording some of these versions, or doing an acoustic version or something like that. And that's like why, I mean...
Can you imagine if some artist, like, take the MTV Unplugged culture from the 80s and early 90s, but the only place to hear an unplugged version of a song is in Rock Band?
Oh my gosh.
And then the option to buy.
Yeah.
And sort of transfer a secure digital file that you can listen to and take with you. There are a lot of people, the questions are going to start to come up is like, so is this a fad? Is this going to go away? But I think the basic concept is so strong. Love for music is not going to go away, and the idea that your songs that you love outside of the game can now be fun in the game, I don't see losing that. Some people may go away from everything, but others will just kind of come in and join. It's such a smart idea.
So, and you all know what my emotional choice is. I mean, I haven't made any bones about it. Mass Effect plays every string of my mind and my heart. And
I'm curious. We've talked about it a bunch this week, and no one mentioned the AI problems. I was talking to Mark, and he said that your buddy AI is getting stuck on walls a lot, and I wonder if that's going to be ironed out in time for release.
I think Mark was overly concerned about that. In the first time they ran through that demo, the maneuvering system has been streamlined so significantly that it really amounts to, I barely even noticed it. As he was running up into the area where the guys got too far ahead and got jammed up, he threw the marker that tells your guys where to go way too far out ahead of himself, and I guess he didn't notice it, and then he was like, oh gosh, they went and killed everybody. And they were bouncing around through the room. But I mean, that's, AI routine is something you're tweaking up to the very end point. So no, I'm not concerned about it. If it's broken when it comes out, sure, that would be a severe disappointment. But everything else, the combat was really fun when he ran through it the second time and didn't accidentally send them out so far that they went through and basically cleared the level out by themselves. It ran really well. He was having a good time playing the game. He was able to play it, at once both like a shooter, a third-person action game, and a role-playing game. The concerns people had about the combat being too like full-spectrum warriorish and too picky, I think think those have all gone away. I think they've done a really good balance with that. The storyline, the storytelling, the digital actors, and the whole, it's the package. It is the package. Mm-hmm. It's what I want to do with my entertainment time when I sit down to play a game.
So I was going to say Little Big Planet, but there's probably no need.
We can hit rewind.
And for my personal one, it really is a toss-up for me. There's two very different games, and one of them's Mass Effect, and the other one. The two games that I most want to go home and play are Mass Effect and Burnout.
Yeah, Burnout's my number 2 after Little Big Planet.
Burnout, they only showed a little bit, but like the handbrake turn parking and the fucking just the amount of imagination and creativity where they've just like completely rethought what that franchise is. I mean, they've kept the essence of it, which is the crazy crashes, but there's like they've like thrown all the conformity of the racing genre out and just been like, we're just going to do what's fun.
Well, and I'm really happy because between 3 and Revenge, it was incremental, and this is actually a big revolution. Yeah. And I'm happy to see the Criterion.
I think it's going to be really influential. And I was watching the guy playing it, and Alex was demoing it at the Sony thing, and he handed the pad over, and there was sort of little flashes of like Crackdown and a lot of sandboxy kind of games.
Did you guys ever play Midtown Madness?
Yeah, but this is way beyond Midnight Madness.
It's way beyond that, but it is that vibe. It is, because we used to play Midtown Madness, and a bunch of us would just get together like in Paris and drive all over the place and see what kind of crazy crap we could do, and we'd make up our own little races, we'd run into each other, we'd race through the Arc de Triomphe, all that kind of stuff. And I was just seeing that like expanded on like tenfold when I was watching Burnout.
Now, I'm not a judge this year. I know you are, Guy.
Yes.
My prediction for what the judges are going to give it to is Rock Band.
Yeah.
I think there's Rock Band. I mean, it's not out yet, but I think it's probably one of the most powerful brands at this E3 in terms of just everyone's talking about it.
So you think Rock Band will win over Call of Duty 4?
Yeah.
I think so too. I think Call of Duty, as good as it is still, you've kind of seen it.
My problem with Call of Duty is we were talking about fatigue earlier. Just shooter fatigue. How many first-person shooters did we see in sequence? All these press conferences.
But it looks like, it's almost like if you took the opening tanker level from Metal Gear 2, put a bunch of buddies on it, and brought it to life in a shooter.
Yeah.
It's just, and I was going to say when you're mentioning Burnout is like a special citation for all of us frame rate whores to Alex Ward and to the guys at Infinity Ward.
Yeah.
There's something for me that's just powerful psychologically about 60 frames. The animation is so good in Call of Duty 4.
Well, and I like those developers. There was no other alternative. They would not settle for anything less.
Yeah. We actually talked about that yesterday with Infinity Ward. I mean, those guys are demons, and if Activision does lose the id engines, it's no doubt why they invested money and let Infinity Ward have the time to do this, because those guys are legitimate top tier engine wizards.
I accidentally offended Alex Ward by misquoting him because he talks 1,000 words a minute, and I thought I'd heard him say that that doing the crash modes wasn't possible because of the layout, and it was actually the design choice. And he said, look, if you say it's not possible, that implies that there's a technical limitation. He goes, there is not a technical limitation to anything that we're doing.
Yeah.
And he goes, but getting this game running at 60 frames a second was like putting a man on Mars. It was just like there is so much shit going, and they did it, and it's rock solid, and it's just so beautiful. I mean.
But to your call about
surprise, come on. We played Black, we played Burnouts before. Those guys know how to spin
the
it.
Shit out of Burnout.
But you have to remember the reason it's a challenge. So, for instance, I know it's at the end, but basically there is and I can't tell how big it is if it's a minority or a lot of people, but there are some people I've talked to who have been critical of Halo 3 single player and how it looks, and similarly critical as they were of multiplayer, and saying they feel like it's just rezzed up, Halo 2. I personally don't think so. What I'm seeing more is that it's an art style. It's a choice that they've made to maintain that look across generations. But the thing with
Halo 3 didn't show well, by the way. Didn't show well at this show at all, particularly well. It was shown in small group, there's a few number of people who got to see it. Most people saw that trailer, which was really, really, really cut up.
The trailer was badly cut.
I thought that Halo 3 legitimately had a chance to be the game of the show, because I thought Microsoft would be shoving it in your face and really pushing it, because it is their, 900-pound gorilla for the fall, and yet they really actually I guess, made a strategic decision to downplay that and let all their other games shine.
Well, the reception it got, I think, speaks to why I think it was such a challenge for Alex, because coming off of something like a Gears of War, like even going back to Call of Duty 2, the bar has been raised. It was like what I was saying at the start of this generation was we saw, target renders from Sony, and we saw, a CG movie from Bungie and all these things, and it just, as journalists, we're not technical people. We don't know how hard it is to make that stuff happen, but we think that stuff should happen. And so for Alex to pull off what people expect to be the visual bar for Burnout, at 60 frames on top of it, I think that's where the challenge came from.
Especially coming in the wake of like the disastrous demise of renderware. Really? Yeah. So even kudos to him.
Yeah.
Wow, what a show. I'm exhausted.
I'm about ready to go to the funeral march that's going up Ocean. So that's where you'll see me, at Gamecock's funeral for E3.
Which started at 4:20 on,
yeah, I'm a little late, but I'll catch up with those guys.
On Friday the 13th.
Nice.
All right, N-Guy, Shane, John.
Been wild.
There you have it. You think this will be the last one?
I hope not.
Something will happen.
Something will happen.
There will be an event next year at some point between May and July. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to try and. A lot of people are saying July is the wrong time to be showing stuff.
I think if they want to have it like this, move it to Vegas, put it in Venetian. Let's have it in late April. That's my theory. Anyway.
All right, well, come back next week. I guess we'll have some maybe closing thoughts. We'll have judges' final selections to talk about, and we'll be able to get a good read on what the community's been really hot for and what they're asking questions about. Maybe we can address some games that I'm sure we've missed some games.
Yeah, there's a lot of DS stuff and PSP stuff we didn't get to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about that next week.
So we'll do our best to catch up on that. Boards.oneup.com is the place to catch up with us on that. And don't forget to check out N-Guy's site, Level Up. Give us the full address.
That would be hard. I don't even know it.
All right, just
Google
N-Guy Kroll and Level Up.
Yeah, there you
Google
go.
blog search.
Yeah, and subscribe to that too. It's a good RSS feed to keep on your reader.
Thanks.
Until next week, we are gone.